Good evening, everybody. Welcome to League of Extraordinary Inventors. I'm your host, Mike from Faraday Research. It is August 16th, 2024. Welcome to the show. It's a Friday night, Free Energy Friday. And we got a regular panel on tonight. We got Nathan, and we have um, Benefactor with us. We also have Noel, or we call her Lulu. And we have Mike from Florida. Welcome to the show.
Guys.
How's everybody doing?
How you
Good.
doing?
Hi.
Excellent. Everybody had a
Good
good
to be
week.
here, Mike.
Yep. Well, it's Friday night. Of course, it's good to be here.
Oh yeah,
Right?
it's
Yeah,
the favorite.
right.
It's my favorite
Yes.
day of the week.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Happy Friday, Free Energy Friday, whatever you want to call it. Sounds good to me.
Right.
Nice.
Hopefully, we'll get Philip on. Maybe he's just running a little bit late, so we got one more spot for one more person to join us. Don't forget, everybody, our live chat is open. And if you want to join the live chat, ask any questions for our inventors, you can do so. And I'll post the comments on the website, or actually on the live stream. So let's get to it. Who wants to start? Who wants to be the lucky first person to start?
They're saying today is
Anybody?
a special day in the solar world. Somehow there's cosmic energy that's coming from the sun that's supposed to shift us from one dimension to the other. But I don't know how
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, there was come to mention it, day before yesterday, there was a big X flare and it hit the southern hemisphere. There's quite a bit of radio blackouts, like shortwave and stuff like that. I believe Southeast Asia was affected, Philippines was affected, all that region, South China Sea area, that was affected by the solar storm. And there was aurora going on too. So if you lived up north, you were able to see a bit of a light show going on.
Nice.
Well, there was one back, it was what, March, April? We had that huge, outburst from the sun. There was like 2 or 3 X flares within a 24-hour period. We
Yeah.
saw the aurora up
Coronal.
here really, really good.
It's called
And
CME,
actually-
coronal mass
Yeah,
ejection. Yeah.
right. And what does that entail?
It destroys satellites. It destroys telecommunications. It could literally,
So
right.
yeah, it's like from what I understand, it's charged particles that actually get ejected from the sun.
That
So
happened today?
that's what day before yesterday. Yeah, day before yesterday we had X flare, but it affected the southern hemisphere, so we were kind of lucky.
Yeah.
It happened, I think it was 2 a.m. in the morning. So yeah, I was sleeping.
Yeah, I think we were lucky. Everything, like most of the devices, were not in operation, so a lot of people might have not gotten as affected as if it was during the daytime.
Yeah, I think the communications like shortwave and radio communications of firstly like the Navy and stuff like that probably was affected. There was some probably radio blackouts with that. So yeah, that's probably highly possible that that's what was going on. So Nathan, what have you been up to this week?
Well, I broke my Tesla coil last week, so I dropped it.
Oh right.
And
Oh
it got,
no.
it got cut like at the bottom, just like killed the wire. So it's about this far from the bottom, right? So I just cut it out a little bit and put it on a switch. So it's now on a toggle. So now either I can use all of it or I can cut that portion out. So what that does is allow me to go from perfect resonance to not resonating and then back. So I can flip back and forth with the toggle in order to do it. It works perfect for my gravity flyer now.
So toggle mean what? Variable resistor you're using? Like
it's a switch. It's just a switch. It gives you it goes from full power, so 2 poles and then the extra one so that you can get over to the other side.
Yeah, how about if you used a variable resistor instead of a toggle? do you think you would be able to correct that fine tune of the resonant frequency at that part of the coil?
Well, I don't need to correct it. See, one side, when you connect it one way, it connects all the wire. So that gives you perfect resonance, right? But when I turn the switch, it gives me out of resonance. So now I get feedback in my coil. So it heats my number one coil, but then it shoots an energy burst as soon as I turn it back to oscillation. So I get a massive energy burst out of it, which is perfect. It was exactly what I wanted. It was the luckiest accident ever. So
really,
yeah,
I was trying
to figure out how to do it. You know what I mean? And it happened on accident.
What, it fell off the table or something?
Yeah, I was trying to show somebody the ultrasound box when I was talking to them for a guest last week, and it just fell off the table. So nothing I could do about it, just fell, and the board hit it, boom, dead on. And once you mess with that wire, it's just going to spray. So it was either rewind a whole new one or just see if you could play with it a little bit, you know what I mean, make something out of it. And
yeah, I got a question for you on your construction. When you wind the coil, do you spray like a glue or an adhesive on it to keep the windings from separating? How do you do that?
As soon as I'm done, I spray it with a spray lacquer.
Oh, okay.
And then it sticks everything to the PVC pipe. So it'll go in between the wire. I mean, even though it's so tight, it'll still get in there and stick to the thing. So it'll stay, and then you can put another coating on it if you want.
Listen up, everybody. That's a tip when you're building Tesla coils.
Yeah, you don't have to put it on first. You don't want it sticky while you're doing it. You just want it tight as you're winding it. The tighter it is, the better. I have to wear these little tiny glasses, my wife's reading glasses, just in order to see the wire where it comes in, because you have to be like just off by an angle like this when it comes in. So it will sit in there perfect every time.
Right.
So, and with the smaller the wire it is, the harder it is. The bigger the wire, cakewalk.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, usually I made mine, if I did make Tesla coils, would be anywhere from a 24 to a 26 gauge. That's usually the size what I used. I didn't go up to say like a 30 or 32 or a 36 gauge. That's too crazy. It's just too much.
I used 28 on the Gravity Flyer, and then the gold one behind me and the red one behind me are both 32.
Both 32. So yeah, you have more patience than I do.
Well, I tried 34, and it was just like fine hair. It was no good.
Yeah. And it breaks easy too, right?
That was the problem. I broke it 3 times.
Yeah. That's discouraging when you're like almost done and the freaking wire breaks. It's like,
and
there's
nothing you can do about it because you already calculated the resonance frequency before you built it and knew exactly how long it had to be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's hard. Yeah, I know the feeling. I've done that a couple of times where I'm wrapping it and then it breaks.
It was a good idea with the switch, Nathan.
Yeah.
Yeah, like so.
It works,
yeah. I've made a few Tesla coils, and I used those little ion generators that you can pick up on Amazon for I think they're like less than $20, and they put out 11 kVA. Not much current, but they put a high voltage out, and I was able to jump sparks about 3 to 4 inches long.
Yeah.
So, and it's loud too because I was using basically a spark gap to do it, so the thing's loud as all hell, right?
That's crazy. Sean just chatted in. He's researching a rectangle wire for his next Tesla coil. That'll be fun.
Tesla did pyramid shaped Tesla coils.
Oh wow.
Yeah, if you watch the Energy from the Vacuum series, what Nathan's been posting, there's one where he's talking about John Serjanka. It's this
John
guy
Sedeka?
that yeah, he had some coils that were shaped like pyramids and conical, like 2 pyramids facing each other, and they join at the point out. And they were apparently coils that Tesla was working on. Never made it into the books, but this guy had it. And John Bendini, when he saw those, he's like, "Ooh, I like to make that."
Yeah,
Right.
of course. Yeah, did you see the Tesla coil he was working on, Mike?
I've seen an original built Tesla coil by Tesla. It was at the observatory right on the mountain where Hollywood, where the Hollywood sign is. There's an observatory going up the mountain, about
Okay.
halfway up. I forget the name of the observatory. I think it's the Observatory of California. If you
Okay.
go in there, they have an original Tesla coil. And when I was there, they were running it. It
Wow.
was the freakiest thing I ever seen in my life. 9-foot lightning bolts coming out of this thing. It was in a Faraday cage. It was in the Faraday cage. I just caught the very end of the demonstration, but I'm just like, oh my God. I don't believe it. So after the demonstration, I went up to the window because it was behind glass because, this thing's shooting out, 4 billion kilovolts, bolts of lightning coming out of the thing, right? You have to isolate that area. It was in a Faraday cage as well. I walked up and it had said original. It had a plaque on it that said originally designed by Nikola Tesla himself.
Nice. Well, I was talking about Sean's coil for our Monday show. Did you see that one?
Which one?
Sean's coil for the Monday show?
I think so.
It's in. I put it up for you to share it for the screen share.
Yeah, maybe put in the share and then we can take a quick look at it.
Yeah, the Death Star coil was amazing.
Hey, Nathan, is your
No,
mic part
I'll
of
hit
your
play real
headphones?
quick.
Good?
Oh, wrong one. Here you go.
You're about to see some, Maccabee.
Do the Tesla coils ionize the air around it?
Yes, they do. Of course. Oh, yeah, big time.
It's round.
Nice. I like that. Cool.
Yeah, he does all kinds of different coils in there, man. I'll show you real quick if I can.
Hey, Paul from Toronto, fellow Torontonian. Welcome to the show. It's
That's
Open
cool.
Minds.
I'm waiting for
Not
those
sure.
arcs to teleport a cup or something.
Well,
I mean, they got to do something eventually. I mean, they're just
Yeah.
now it's just a show. I mean, it's wow, that's cool. That's all. But what is it doing?
It almost looks like a cannonball with a fuse in it. You know what I mean?
We got to find a purpose for these high voltage transient.
Oh yeah,
arcs.
application.
Yeah, an application for them, like a real.
Well,
world.
see, he puts sparks out of them, but it doesn't have to. They'll just put energy out if you change the DC. He's got AC going through it now,
Oh.
and he's got this little mini Tesla coil, the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah,
Makes
this
all
is
kinds of
neat.
cool design.
You can see the energy return.
Yeah, it's just
so
amazing.
cool.
Maybe use them to drive a motor.
Anyway,
you know, a
It's
lot of
funny
lag.
because I seen this video of this guy trying to visualize energy flowing through a wire by hooking up all these like multimeters and stuff. And I'm like, well, all you need to do is this.
yeah. Throw a little high voltage in it, see what it does. You know, it doesn't lie to you when it goes through there. That's the one thing about high voltage. It likes to tell you where it flows. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You get it up to about 30,000 volts, and it likes to tell you exactly where it wants to go, where, you know what I mean? Every direction. So then you put it in low voltage, you know exactly where everything is.
So if you
Right. So then you can fine tune it at that point.
That's right.
a good way of looking at it there. I like that.
if you put a TV next to it, it'll turn on without.
Oh,
plugging.
I could do it right at my desk right in front of me, and the TV's just fine. But if I put it around 50 to 60 hertz, TV goes completely blank. And if I bring up the EM field, if I try to hook it to something else that's a bit bigger, like a piece of metal or something like that, immediately turns everything off. So even at like 10 feet, it'll start making it change the channel on your TV. You know what I mean? It'll go from tab to tab to tab and start clicking like it's finding different hardware or something attached to your computer. Yeah.
Mm.
So then, what is this app? What could we use it for if we can't turn on things with it, and without?
It's 360 degrees of radiant energy. It's
They can
not
make
like a
heat,
Tesla
right?
coil. Tesla coil has a dead zone on top and bottom. This thing is full 360. So if you put it in the center of your device, it's every which direction you want.
Ah,
So completely useful for different things. You know what I mean?
I was thinking to like make a stator coil, put on top of the coil, the Tesla coil emission, to see what kind of energy you pick up with it.
Yeah, I could.
Well,
For generating
well,
power.
I
the
found
only thing you
I found a
sorry,
little.
go ahead.
I found a little device. If you guys can help me identify what this does, it says signal booster. See this?
Yeah.
Motor says broadband drop amp, 52 to 1000 MHz,
Right.
something.
So
52.
that's to boost your cell phone signal. So it's like a repeater for your cell phone. So if you live in an area like say like a valley or lowland, you hook
Yes.
up that to an aerial antenna really high, and it'll make your signal for your cell phone better. So that's what that is.
All right. Thanks.
Cell phone booster.
I didn't know what it was. I just found it in the pile.
No, it's good. Yeah, they're handy, especially if you live in a rural area where the cell phone towers are quite a distance away. Yeah.
Or I think in my old house we had a lot of trees. And I think that was part of them.
Also, lowland. If you're in the lowland, you
Mhm.
know, a lot of the cell phone towers, they don't think, if you have a mountain, you should take advantage of it. That's where the cell phone tower should be at the highest point, right?
Yes.
Gerald's on. Gerald,
Hey,
I
Gerald.
sent you a link.
Hey, Joe.
I sent you a link if you want to hop on. It should be in your email. We got one more spot here if you want to jump on. That's cool. Yeah. So, yeah, it's kind of funny. Like when I was in the Philippines, that's exactly what they did. All the cell phone towers were on the peaks of mountains and high ground. So, like, I could be in the valley and I was on a river, like literally on a raft, in the South Philippines with a Rogers phone, and I got full bars.
Nice.
The Asians
Yeah.
are good with the technology. They don't.
Oh, they're ahead of us, and their
they
cell
don't make
phone
many
rates
mistakes in that area.
their cell phone rates are like so much cheaper than here. We're getting so hosed.
Right, it's true.
Oh yeah, like
I know that I've never been to Asian countries, but in Bulgaria though, the cell phone's a lot cheaper.
Oh god, yeah, we're one of the highest paid. Canada and the U.S. are the highest for cell phone charges, right?
I pay for 6 cell phones for me and my kids and a portable Wi-Fi router. I pay $600 a month.
Holy, you're paying $600 U.S. a month.
Yes,
Holy wow, that's
That's
a lot.
that's
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
I just got my daughter a line. Doesn't give her a lot of data, but she's got Wi-Fi and she's got a cell phone number, and then I can text her. She's only 12, but
Whoop.
a month for her, that's nothing, right? But 600, holy cow!
Yeah.
But mind you, you have more kids than I do.
They've got their cell phones, and then they have
I
their,
remember family plans being a lot better than that.
and then they connect Apple Watch to their whole system. So I think it's like baseline's like $30 something, and then every time you add a service,
Check out Patriot Mobile.
$12, $13.
Lulu, check out Patriot Mobile.
Patriot Mobile.
Yeah, like $10 a month. Or something.
Who's got the doggy?
I do.
They're really good.
Oh,
Was that a dog? I thought somebody was yelling in the background.
Yeah, I've got 2 of them.
Somebody had a dungeon or something.
No, I have them. There's a room next to the kitchen because they won't let me. If they hear me on the phone, they'll be jumping on So I try to barricade them in the room while I'm doing anything.
Yeah, it's funny how much we pay. Hey, Gerald, we actually see you. That's like
Hey.
cool.
Yeah, we
I
got the
never
whole
seen how you
covered.
look like.
I'm trying to get ahead. I mean,
Oh, minus Bernie.
Trying to
I
get
gotta
ahead.
fix this here. How's everybody doing?
Good. What happened?
Great.
Good.
Like,
Hey, what happened to your camera? I want to actually see you.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay,
It's not
there we
just
go.
ahead, no.
Yeah,
How are you guys?
good, good.
Good. I missed the first little bit. I've been busy.
Yeah, I've been fighting with the car. Got to redo the exhaust on my car. It's falling apart.
Oh,
So
yeah, I hear that. I lost a car like that once. The exhaust fell off right in front of a cop, and I had just my license just expired.
Oh, here goes that car.
Yep.
you have a lot of you
And it wasn't
have a lot of
Go ahead. Oh, sorry.
you have a lot of great experiences with cops. I noticed.
It was a long time ago.
The
20
galaxy
years
far,
at
far
least.
away.
25, maybe. Yeah, I've had an interesting life. I don't know what goodness. You know what? I always looked at it like this: if you're gonna do anything, jump in with both feet, and if you don't lose your legs, then it was a good thing, right? So
Yeah.
Exactly.
If you don't lose your legs. I just got that one. See how slow I am? I used
So
to be a lot slower.
I got a video for you guys to see. I was hopping the coil again, except this time it goes up a little higher.
Nice.
I saw that.
No, this one's different. I haven't put this one out. I don't know if you guys want to see it or not.
Oh, put it up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, can I?
I'm not sure if I can. I got 6 spots here. I'm not sure if I can pull up a 7th. I'm
Well, if
maxed
I
out.
present, would it work that way, or can I even present?
Well, you could do over your channel that you're on right now, but to add to my screen, I might not be able to do it because I don't have the full version.
Well,
Well-
Mike just pulled me off the screen so he can present it.
or I could go backstage and then watch from backstage. If you
Yeah,
want.
yeah, go back. Yeah, just until Gerald just shows this video quick, and then we'll pop you back on.
All right. How do I?
Okay. Just
Yeah.
back out and then log back in. Yeah, and just stay backstage. Yeah. All right, let's give it a shot here. You can
All
share
right,
your
give me
screen
one
there.
sec. I'll just set this video up.
I think you can present. It's just guests. You only have 6 guests. They can present though.
Okay, I'll have to try that. I haven't tried that. I thought I was capped at 6.
Okay, so it'd be share screen.
6 guests, not 6 windows.
Okay. We'll see how this works. Maybe I can pull her back on in a sec here. She's just on the backstage there, so I can pull her back in anytime.
I wish I knew how to share my account on here, and so we can add more guests. But I don't even know how to do that. So.
All right, can you see that?
Okay, I'll pull it up here.
There we are.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay, let's see if I can get it to play here.
And turn it up a little.
Yeah,
Volume.
the volume maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I'm at max.
These little pieces of paper weigh each half a gram. There's 12 of them in this stack. That equals 6 grams. So
That's how you calculate the weight.
here, with
Yep.
oil sitting.
No, that's smart.
What we have here with this oil sitting on this magnet,
What were they?
6 grams.
They're half a gram each. There's 12 of them, so there's 6 grams there. The coil weighs 4.5.
Wow.
Nice.
That's cool.
So what are you doing there? Are you pulsing it with forward DC or what?
I'm just pulsing the backside of the circuit from the cap bank, but now
Making
Mm.
like a rail gun there.
no, you can't make it like a rail gun though because it's the coil that's hopping, right?
Well, yeah. If you were to stationary the coil, then you could send something through the center of the coil, like iron or whatever.
Not sure how much.
Maybe.
No, not maybe. Definitely. It's it's a solenoid operation. You know, you can they already make these guns that are coils. That
Yeah,
power.
rail guns. Yeah.
What do you call it?
The rail guns.
Rail gun, yeah.
U.S. Yeah, the U.S. military or the U.S. Navy is actually working on some very big prototypes, and they're scary. They're super powerful.
Yeah, I don't want to make nothing like that. I'll tell you.
Hey, Ben, we can hear you typing.
Oh,
I think they make it to launch stuff into orbit.
Oh, here we go. Let's see. Can't get away now.
How much? That thing must have weighed a pound. No, half a pound.
And that's it. So I'll stop sharing.
How much power were you actually putting into that?
You know what? I was just using that wall plug, and it was literally one pulse, 23 volts. Bang. That's
Through a
it.
diode.
That's it. Eh?
Nope. Through my circuit.
Was it rectified?
Backside of it. Okay, so it's a modified dual theme. Well, it's not so modified. Where Bedini takes the power from the diode off of the base and it goes to your secondary battery for charging, I take that and I fill a capacitor bank with it, and I use the capacitor bank to make the coil hop. And it hops with a lot of force.
You mean the anode?
You could call it that. I remember I said before, I'm only showing a pittance because there's certain things I don't want to show on YouTube that might just get it taken off.
Kill my algorithm, man.
So I'm only showing little bits and pieces so that everybody gets the idea what I'm doing and what I can do.
Very nice.
I'm just going to scoot up for a quick smoke. You guys just carry on. I'll be right
What was
back.
the cap value on the voltage? What did you pump it up to?
What's that?
What did you bring the cap value up to?
It was at 23.
23 volts.
23 volts. I showed it on the camera.
Oh, I didn't see. It's hard to see them.
The reason why it's got such force is because of the geometrical form of the coil itself. It compresses that field in such a dense spot all at once that it pushes off. But now again, that's sitting above a magnet. I haven't showed anything else.
23 volts is not a lot. Yeah.
I like the other one where you had the little stick and you showed it jump first a little bit and then it jumped off of it. That was beautiful.
Well, what I just showed you guys, picture this. Maybe I should just wait and show it to you guys during the presentation. So that hopping, let's say for instance, it's possible. I'm not saying I've done it. I'm saying let's say it's possible that you could levitate it a little bit off the magnet and then hit that big hop, watch it jump and then stop higher up and then hit it again. I'm just saying.
Yeah, you're just saying, huh?
That's all I'm saying. I haven't done it.
Hiding it from us. You're hiding it from us.
Possible, but we'll see, right? I guess during the presentation we'll.
It's possible there's a Tesla coil behind me. It's the same thing.
No, that's not what I mean. No, I just think it's possible. I haven't achieved.
You can't do it with direct current unless it's pulsed or you have frequency from AC or something.
Like quantum superposition.
How could I have that considering that the function generator was off?
Well, you did pulse it when you made that one contact.
That's
one
true.
pulse.
That's true. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you did disconnect right after you connected, so that completes the pulse.
But if I held it there, what
And it would not be a
happen
pulse.
was-
Then it would not be a pulse. It'd be constant current. If you
So
didn't-
this much I could say: if I held it there, the coil would have came down so much, but it would have stopped, and it would have been way higher than you guys are used to seeing, maybe 6 to 8 inches.
right, because you're keeping the EMF flowing through the coil constantly, so there's no reason for it to come down. It should stay up,
That could be it. Yeah,
unless the battery
a
dies.
definite possibility. A definite possibility. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I'd be curious while you do it. Just take a piece of tinfoil, just a thin little piece,
Mhm.
and just see if the piece of wood lets it stick to it.
Oh yeah.
Just see if it's got any pull to it, like a charge in it.
Well,
you want to hit it with square wave, high frequency square wave.
No, that's not what I'm getting at. I'm just wondering what his coil's putting off. So depending on what it puts off, if you put off enough, light amps on it, you might get a charge on the wood.
you know what? I tried your experiment when I reversed the polarity on the coil, and I didn't use high voltage. I only used 24 volts, and it sucked right down to the wood. And when I went to pick it up, you could feel the force.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. So
definitely changes it.
now, when it comes to doing the charging of the surface and the hopping, I don't think I'm at the right voltages yet. I need to use the circuit that Jeremiah Pop built for me. It goes from low to high voltage, and from low frequency to high frequency, you're able to change it to. It's kind of like a function generator in a way, I guess. It's a neat little circuit. So I need to try that to see if what you and I were talking about works. But I'm seeing signs that it's gonna. So
Yeah, I have a feeling you're right there with all the stuff that I've been seeing. By the way, did you understand what I was trying to tell you on your page? That it's not a torus with a donut around it. Like it's not. It's not a toroidal with just a hoop around it, and that's the field. It's a spiral. It keeps getting bigger, and it keeps compacting the center like you're pushing rods down in it until they get so compact that it just condenses the energy into one singularity, while the outside energy gets bigger to come into it.
You're right.
Like a black hole?
Spiraled.
It's
there's a
omnidirectional hoop. It's a 3-dimensional omnidirectional.
Not
spiral.
quite. Nathan's got the right idea. It's a huge vortex.
It's
And then when it
omnidirectional.
comes to the center of the coil, it compresses. But because of the way that the coil is wound, it actually compresses into the form of a sphere. And then there's
Omnidirectional means
spheres.
donut. That's what omnidirectional means.
Yeah, and then there's two spheres on the inside of that, a positive and negative, and they're chasing each other. And
Right,
it
not
pushes the
two,
energy
not
outside
two.
like a disc.
They're not two. There's two flows. Not just
Yeah.
two lines. There's two flows, and those lines are spiraling all around in two different directions. Of course, this way too, in two different directions. Yeah, both ways, horizontal. Vertical.
Yeah, I kind of see where you would see that. I know what you mean, and I know what Nathan means too.
Okay,
I
so
can-
conventional current is what we use to describe everything because it's just easier. That's the only reason.
Yeah, but this is not AC or DC, and it acts nothing like it.
No, conventional
not at all.
current is described in one direction, from plus to minus. But there's
no plus or minus on this. It's a vortex, so
yes, I
it's
know.
a flow.
And the
It's a
electrical
flow.
community knows that too, but they don't discuss it in that way because it gets too confusing. So
It's
conventionally,
not confusing at all. It makes it more confusing when you try to put it in base terms like it's Steinmetz.
Yeah, because Steinmetz, the way that he put it, he literally canceled out the ether scalar wave.
That's right.
Third component. The
Well,
component's
it
the
only
most
makes it more
important.
confusing for troubleshooting circuits.
Yeah, but you're not troubleshooting the circuit. You're building a vortex. It's completely different.
Well, building and
vortex.
troubleshooting and understanding circuits, not just troubleshooting, building and understanding them. A lot of reasons why conventional current is described in one direction, not just one.
I understand that, but that's not what he's creating.
We should just try to learn with that one direction.
But that's not what he's creating. You can't put it in conventional terms because you just get it wrong.
Understand that the scientific and electrical community realizes what you realize.
Yeah, but that's why they've gotten nowhere. That's why they've gotten nowhere, Mike, because they don't understand this. They still see it like you do with AC and DC. They don't see it right. No, they don't see it right. I'm sorry, no. No. Baloney. This is why people don't even understand Bedini's work. They don't understand the spike. They don't understand the most important part of the circuit. They think it getting mesmerized by other garbage in it. I saw it yesterday when we were watching Ben's video. All the garbage around it, and the answer was right there in front of him.
Yeah.
Right there.
He explains it. But
Well,
nobody
yeah.
does.
You know,
Yeah.
it's hard to train people that way. It makes it harder to teach.
But
Yeah,
see,
but
that's just the point, though. If people weren't trained in the classical electrical engineering and they were trained right from the start, knowing that there's a third component that's ignored, then maybe they'd build systems in order to bring that component out. And we wouldn't have to deal with this lack and the crap that everybody keeps building. That's just my opinion.
I agree. There's a geometry thing in there that takes that vortex to another level.
They call that conventional current for just understanding's sake, not for reality's sake. For
I get that.
understanding's sake. That's why they call it conventional current, for the understanding's sake, not the reality's sake.
I guess what we're saying is we don't care what they say. We're trying to get an understanding so we can build the system. And if we keep
No, you're right. It does flow in both directions, but conventional current flows forward.
I hope I'm not
And the
yelling.
current that we're talking about flows it also flows forward and backwards, you know, because we're talking about
No. Yeah, I think you're missing it. Some things flow on the outside, some things flow on the inside. There's more to it than just back and forth.
Yeah. I think a lot of the mainstream science, they don't take into account the heavy side component, right? I think that's what Nathan's talking about. The heavy side component is there. You know, there's a field on the outside, and with current, it's moving, it's in motion, as well as the current going through around the wire itself. And the heavy side component is probably a lot of conventional science doesn't look at.
Yeah, but even Steinmetz acknowledged it when he looked at two wires and said the field around the wires, okay, when they're bare versus when they're shielded. So Steinmetz knew it was there, but he used the shielding to get rid of it. Okay, that's why it's important to know both, because you know what he got rid of that Tesla used, and that was the same thing. But that's the same thing that Gerard Morin was saying, is the energy was flowing on the outside, not on the inside. Just a little bit on the inside to make it follow or track with it. That's it. That's the biggest difference in it. And even Steinmetz knew it was there, and he worked to get rid of it.
And he was the last, probably, of the old school engineer that realized and knew this stuff.
Well, yeah, but guys, conventional science does recognize what you are talking about.
Yeah, but that's
They
just
do
the
not.
point.
They do not recognize it. They do recognize it, and they do explain the current on the outside of the wire very clearly in conventional science. They just do not teach with that. They teach with the flow that goes inside the coil.
Yeah.
They don't teach with the flow that goes outside the coil.
But that's where the disconnect is. That's where all the backyard mechanics don't get to play. That's where the inventors get stopped dead cold, because the electrical engineering society has decided that it is to be like this and spoken of like this and written like this.
Well, they scientifically they teach electricity with the way we're teaching it, forward and backwards. But conventionally, for the conventional reasons, they do not. They teach it in one direction. But scientifically, when it's taught that the energy flows in the opposite direction on the outside of the wire. This is shown in black and white videos. Come on.
Hold on. I can tell you right now, from the math that they do and what they're quantifying, they are not calculating it. I'm sorry, they have a view like yours when they calculate.
Not
So they
disregarding.
don't get it. I could tell you that from looking at the math. It takes 2 seconds to point it out. They absolutely do not calculate it right because they don't know the ins and outs of it.
My
need to
system
calculate
itself
that one.
proves it. Everything that they try and cancel out in their electrical engineering circuits and building of anything, I literally use in my system. My system wouldn't work without it.
Everything they dump to ground is what you use.
Let me throw a picture out to you guys of trying to calculate amperage with non-conventional current. You're going to see no current flow because it's going to be going one way and the other, and it's going to cancel the flow altogether. Your meter's not going to move. So they make meters to read one direction. You see, you can't. Okay, there's another reason why for you.
Yeah, and if I was building my house, that'd be perfect advice. I'd absolutely follow it.
You can't measure.
That's not what I'm building here.
You can't measure it unless it's conventionally measured.
You can't measure this anyway. That vortex, you can't measure with any tool you have. You don't have a tool that can measure it.
I'm talking about electricity in general. You can't measure it.
Yeah, well, anybody can measure that. That's fairly simple. I could wire my whole freaking house right now, man. That's easy. That's easy compared to what we're doing.
But try to measure the AC wave going in 2 directions with the meter. You won't be able to.
I don't care. I just don't care. It's not something that I'm interested in. I want this extra energy. I want the dark energy. I want the spikes. I want the potential. I don't care about AC and DC. They're a means to an end for me. You have to use what you have to use in the circuit, but in the end, we want the vortex energy. That's all we're looking for.
You know what I'm finding with this vortexes? These coils don't just have, I guess pulse DC would be considered a form of AC. So they don't just have AC, they have AC and DC. It's just manipulating the fields in the right way, like what you're trying to do with the gravel flyer. It's going to make this thing hop and settle, right?
Yeah.
So, I agree. Go ahead.
You have full control over a DC pulse, where an AC, most AC generators are designed to run, in North America at 60 hertz, or if you live in Europe, it's 50 hertz.
I call it the zombie.
Yeah, it's the zombie frequencies.
Exactly.
Right?
Just straight like.
Yeah, like 60 hertz, believe it or not, is more parasitic to the human body than 50 hertz.
Yep,
a 50 hertz signal. Yeah. So, that's why everybody's, so disconnected, and they got all these mental issues and everything. It's all the 60 hertz that we're using is just screwing around with our biological system.
Didn't they used to use like 120 hertz or 130 or something like that? And then they changed it?
I think Tesla was probably, I think Tesla was working with it, but I think because of the current purposes, they wanted him to drop it down to a 60 hertz frequency.
But I don't think it was Tesla that did it. It was Steinmetz.
It was Steinmetz designed it like that, yeah.
Yeah, through GE, he changed it because they were much higher, and then they had like 2-pole and 3-pole, you know what I mean? 2-phase, 3-phase, you know what I mean? Yeah. Going on, they had to put it all together at one.
GE ran the world for the longest time, or at least had a good hand in it, so.
Yeah, well, Steinmetz was
the grid brings in like 7,000 volts into one phase and then splits it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why most factories now run on a 3-phase system, right?
7,000 volts AC.
Like we have a 44,000 volt transformer outside of my work.
4K to 7K.
Nice.
Right. So, and then it steps down. A lot of our machinery run at 480 volts. Then you got your welding, all the welding rigs in there. You're talking huge amounts of reactive current going through that building. So that's why we have a transformer outside the building, because the demand is just so huge, right?
Yeah, I guess if you're welding all the time, eh?
Oh God, yeah. And we have probably about 25, 30 welding stations,
That's straight current.
Yeah.
I believe there's another way.
What are you guys making?
Well, I can't
That-
really talk
A
about
time machine.
that many welding machines. Like, what do you make?
A time
Yeah.
machine.
Well,
I
the
mean,
company
it
makes.
sounds. Go ahead.
We're a subcontractor for NATO, so I'll let you figure it out.
Oh, so you make all kinds of stuff. That's good.
Yeah, nothing we can hear about.
Yeah.
Let's not get YouTube shadow ban. If we say trigger words, but
Yeah, exactly.
I get it.
We're being listened to, you guys, by multiple people, and I love it. Do you guys realize that Michael Perrone, an alien scientist after our last live, was discussing the very tech that we were discussing and actually agreeing that over unity is possible? I don't know if you guys caught that.
Yeah.
It was
No, I didn't watch the show. So what did they exactly say?
Well, Michael Perrone was bringing up the fact that electromagnetic frequencies and electromagnetic systems might actually have a key, or there might be something there when it comes to over unity. And then he referenced a few systems, not ours, mind you, but he's starting to think outside the box, I think. I like Michael Perrone, but he's really in the books kind of a guy, right? And hey, that's cool, but I don't know. I don't follow the rules. That's my system's based on not following the rules. In fact,
well, the thing,
Mike, what do you know about morphine?
Like all of our systems that we use today are a closed circuit. Since you open it up to the outside environment, allow energy to flow into the closed system, now you've got more energy coming into the system that you're actually using to produce it. So
yes,
you're opening up an orifice into the closed circuit, and Bearden talks about this a lot too.
Yeah.
And the other technique that's very important to this component is you cannot kill the dipole. So you have to somehow harness the energy that's coming into that system in a way that it's not killing the dipole. And it took me a long time to figure out exactly what he meant by it and how to actually do it.
The open core dipole.
So, in very simplistic terms, what does that mean, not killing the dipole?
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead, Gerald. Go ahead, Gerald.
Well, I was just going to talk about an open circuit, which could go to explaining the dipole, like an open circuit and a closed circuit. So in the system that I use, or we'll say, for instance, a battery and a light bulb, that's a closed circuit. And all it's doing is draining the power from the battery to light the light bulb.
Right.
And when there's no more power, the light bulb shuts off. So to give you a visual of what I'm doing, I'm turning the power for the light on really quick and creating
an open load,
like a burst of energy so that entropy can start right away. But before entropy goes completely and drains the battery, I give it another kick, kind of like a swing on a pendulum, right?
Right. As long as you have I think the point what he was getting at is non-equilibrium. As soon as you have equilibrium, that's when things die off. When you keep the unequilibrium, the system can regenerate itself.
Right. Everything's looking for balance.
Right, because nature's going to kick in and try to equalize the system.
Yeah, because equilibrium means entropy. Equilibrium means a balance of both sides, right? That's when the battery and the bulb doesn't work. So,
So if you have a system with a power that's enormous on one side and it's really small on the other side, the system is going, or the nature's going to kick in and try to equalize that by giving it a kick of extra energy. And most systems ignore that extra energy.
So another good example of what Gerald was talking about, the closed circuit. So you have battery running a light. Okay. So let's change the circuit a little bit. Okay. So one part, say the positive coming off the light, say we put a very large coil there. And instead of using just regular straight DC current, let's start pulsing it now. So now you've opened up the circuit to a back EMF. The back EMF collapse emanates around outside of that closed circuit. So that coil is the
Outside the
orifice.
open core,
That's right.
not
That's
the
right.
closed core, which is a round ring toroid core. That's a closed
No.
loop core. BDD
We're
doesn't
talking-
use that kind of core. He uses a straight
So
bar
can we-
open core.
Can we
So that's how the
visualize?
outside happens, outside
Can we
core.
visualize back EMF as like a reverberance of the signal itself, or an interaction between something else?
Well, how is the
Well,
back EMF going to flow around a ring core?
You can. I think it's called a resonant frequency, like a resonant frequency, like the second frequency.
Well, yeah, when you get your coil into a resonant frequency, that's when it's at its optimal operation, right?
Resonant frequency is 2 frequencies with a pulse.
Right.
Okay.
And
It's got to have that pulse in it. It's like an amplification of those frequencies.
And meanwhile,
Exactly what I'm using.
So even just running power through a wire, that wire is now going to create a magnetic field. So if it's running straight DC, you cannot harness any power from outside the system. As soon as you start pulsing it through a coil, now you're creating a massive field, and now the field is interacting with free space where energy exists, and it collapses. Now you're going to draw or open up that orifice of energy into the closed circuit system now.
Now
So that's why
imagine that
you-
collapse with a toroid core. Imagine
So
that
it acts
collapse
like a
with toroidal
vacuum.
core. It's not the same thing.
It
Does
doesn't
it
matter
act
what
like a
kind
vacuum?
How does it
Like-
collapse back onto the toroidal core? It doesn't. It goes to the center of the toroid, not back
of
into.
that's where 0 point is.
Yeah, because the
But
wave
on
function
a bar
collapses
core, it's different.
very sharply.
Different thing happening here.
So if you're
A
using
toroid-
AC,
It depends if you have an open core or a closed core, because it'll make a difference. Gerald has an open one, but Deanie has a closed one, because he fills his core with rods, where Gerald has an open air.
Right.
Yeah, open.
So it's two different effects completely when you do it.
Yeah.
All right, Gerald, you gonna school us?
I don't know about that. I'm trying to draw it really fast, and it's not going to work well.
Well, anyway, the flux in the core and the toroidal core has a hard way of escaping, whereas it's a bar core. It has two open
Well, it's
ends.
closed. It's a
Two
closed
open ends on
circuit.
that bar core, and the flux can escape as well as enter.
When you have a toroidal core, it's closed.
It's
So
closed,
the
right?
field
So how
will-
is your flux going to escape, or anything on the outside get in?
I'm not talking about a toroidal core. I'm talking a regular run-of-the-mill coil around.
All right.
Just I'm not
Well, that's
talking
what-
about a closed.
That's what an open
I'm not-
circuit is, a bar core. A closed circuit is a round core. When you're talking about the
Toroidal.
EMF of the,
Yeah, I wasn't talking about that. I'm talking about an open core.
I know you were, but we were also talking about closed circuits, so I wanted to explain that.
I'm drawing this totally backwards. Here, let me see if I can do this.
So that's why I think
Yeah.
Bedini went with the open core, open circuit.
Of course, because that was the way he was getting the radiant energy spike into the system.
Right, and I don't think you would have gotten the radiant would get into a ring core, is what I'm saying, because there's no open ends.
It has to be an open core. Has to be.
I think ring
I
cores
totally
are good if
messed
you want
this
to
drawing up.
send power, and hold on to it.
Give me a sec.
Got a lot of typing to do there, Ben?
You said what?
Sounds like
Got a lot of typing to do there?
Yeah,
like Charlie
I'm
Brown.
talking to
It's like-
Sean.
Sounds like he's got an old school typewriter over there. You just got to
yeah,
pull the
yeah,
lever and pull
yeah.
it back.
That's right with the ding.
He's a fast
Oh, is it
typer, though.
taking?
Wow.
Hold on. Sometimes it defaults. Yeah, my bad. It defaulted to my webcam audio mic. So let me change that.
Let's say this is a wire. I don't know if you can see that.
All right.
The glare is probably
Well, you can see it. Go ahead.
okay.
that way.
So when you pulse power through, It goes through the center, but it goes this
Can
way,
you enlarge
right?
his screen? Can you
Yep,
enlarge his screen?
yep.
But then there's also energy that goes on the outside of the wire, and it goes in a circle. I know I'm going to screw this up here. Hopefully I can get this right. But your power goes around the wire in one direction, and it goes through the wire in the other direction, and there's your current. So when you pulse a bunch of power through, you're not getting all your back EMF in your line. You're canceling out so much of it, right? So your current can flow through better than it would as if you were going straight DC. Because if you're going straight DC, you get all this current that goes around the wire, slowing down the current that goes through the wire. And that's why you get that heating up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah.
It builds up.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you,
It's
Gerald.
perfect.
Okay. So now with my coil, Mike's talking about how a toroid, it's a closed circuit. But my coil doesn't work like that. It works like a series of line inductors, and it pushes the energy out around it like a spiral, like Nathan was talking about. But then that spiral comes into a fine point. This is the fine point. But because you have a north and a south pole,
I was talking about iron core, not the core of a coil. An iron
okay,
core.
fair enough. But I thought you were talking about a toroid. My point was you got a north and a south here. And when that vortex comes in, I know I'm messing this up, guys, and it focuses right here in the center.
On the blotch wall.
Right?
Blotch wall.
Exactly. And then you'll have another one that comes down out of the bottom. But in the center of the coil, you'll have your north and you'll have your south chasing each other because your vortex from the bottom is south in the opposite direction of the one coming up top. But they meet in the middle from that compression, that energy density, and then they chase each other. And that's what pushes the energy out.
Right.
So
when they spin, and they're spinning gyroscopically.
Yes, they're also spinning like this.
And that coil is coreless. It's a coreless coil.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you think you can
coreless, not core, coreless.
Do you think you can
No iron.
like be able to have control to maneuver this thing up or sideways, or just by the energy?
Actually, the video I just showed you guys, I didn't bring it up, but I wanted to see if anybody else would pick it up. Not too many people did. Well, actually, I don't think any of you did. When the coil hopped and pushed that aluminum can up and shot forward, there's a reason why it did. If you watch the way I put the coil on the magnet, I off-centered it just a little so that magnetic field would push it out the back like a squeeze. And when it went to hop, it hit the aluminum cap, flipped it, and shot it out forward. It's kind of
there is a way to, to control
Gerald,
it.
you can use that same mechanism to relay.
So I'm done presenting, just so you're aware. You can,
Gerald, you could use that same effect to make a relay.
Just kidding. What's that, Mike?
I said that same effect that you just described, you could use it to make a relay.
Yeah, and let's say you got a coil here, right?
Oh,
you got a bunch of pickup coils on the outside. Let's say, for instance, this sucker can float. Well, these are electromagnets, and they're all the way around, right?
Each one's an electromagnet.
Well, listen, the coil here, if it was floating, right, and these are attached to the coil, in theory, because they're electromagnets or scalar magnets, or call it whatever you want, when you pull more power into this one, it squeezes the back end of this field and it pushes the coil this way. From my experience. And
So
if I put
you'd have maneuverability like very easily just by controlling
from
which
12 separate
electromagnet you want to.
from 12 separate points around
Yeah,
the
that's
coil.
interesting.
Oh.
Yeah.
But they're
So
no-
now I'm done presenting.
Are they in series?
Yeah, they're very important for propulsion.
Yeah.
No, they're not in series, Mike.
They couldn't.
Yeah,
be.
but
They
you're-
were.
They
You wouldn't be
could
able
be
to do
though.
that.
Your burst of energy comes to the center of that core, though. So when you want to go super fast, you have to take advantage of those funnels in order to get it. So you have to bring the energy higher through the funnel in order to get it to go in one direction faster.
Yes.
So you go side to side with the other ones, but the other one has to be going that way because it's like what was Schauberger? When you put it in there, you're sucking yourself through the vortex.
Yeah, that Schauberger device.
Yes.
Is something else, man.
Yes, and what you could do though is reduce your pressure from being pushed up, and add the pressure from behind like a pinch, so you'd be going at an angle, or you would turn your power down to the point where you're just about to fall, and then you would push power into the back end and shoot forward.
Now check this out. The B-2 bomber uses the ability to put the static on the outside, giving it easier access to go fast through the air. You know what I'm saying? So you're actually eliminating a lot of inertia because of your vortex in the center. That's why they move that way. Because that's the exact reason. We already have the technology. It just needs to be amplified with the vortex. So they don't have that in that bomber.
Okay, so from my very near recent research, I believe that AC has to be on the outside for the skin, and it's DC on the inside column. Know what I mean?
Well, you gotta have more like a potential than an AC, I think. It's got to interact with the environment.
Yeah.
And the environment's going to give it more energy because when you get up in the atmosphere, you get energy. So you're just like running a Corona motor at that point. So you need that static to blend with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. For every 3 feet, it's 100 volts of potential. I think that's how it works. Every meter, it's 100 volts of potential. So, yeah, and if you can collect that static while you're up there, you stay up forever.
That's exactly what Otis T. Carr was saying with the OX, X1. That's the machine he was talking about where he got over unity. It wasn't on the ground that he got over unity. It's when he got up in the atmosphere he got over unity. That was the kicker right there.
Yeah.
That's very interesting, Nathan.
Just set that sucker to float and just zap the energy off of it all day long.
Yep. Because all he's doing is creating a spike like a Bedini right into a capacitor that goes into his Tesla coil in the center. Mm-hmm. This isn't difficult. He's oscillating it in the center in that Tesla coil, and then the Tesla coil itself puts a longitudinal wave out. So if you had a hollow Tesla coil in one of these UFOs, you would get the same thing. You'd be able to create the vortex easily because it's not unlike when you spin a UFO in the shape that it is. It's just like the Tesla turbine blade. It'll bring it up and in and then down back in.
Right.
So you're going to be able to take care of the energy that way. So if you could think about it that way, I run the Gravity Flyer without a shell, but if I put a shell on it, it completely changes everything. See, but mine's 2 toroidals, not 1. So your coil's 1. I got 2, which makes it more like a magnetosphere and a balanced.
Yeah.
And it makes it more of a field generator than it is a machine like yours.
Yeah, I get what you see. I get what you mean by that totally.
Coming in clear, Nathan.
Huh.
Strange, isn't it?
Now I see why you gotta hit it in order for those two fields to come together, and once they do, you're gonna get that hop.
Because
I see that. Yep.
Remember your bubbles? You had the 2 bubbles, right? And you made 1 bubble, then you made your second bubble, and your coil's above it, right? Now I need to squeeze it in between the 2, just like you did, and pop it. It's like pushing down on a balloon and then letting it off.
I just got to find what pressure I need. That's all in this balloon.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah, we're like working on the same thing, but they're a bit different. Like if you put your coil in the center and then I put a plate spinning around it just with an open hole in the center.
Yep.
I can get a field to generate like everywhere around this thing. I can get you your field on the outside, and I can get you a big field on the, even further than that. I can get them to interact for you. I can get you everything that you want with that coil, in the center, perfectly. So we can go to outer space to whatever you want. We got like a force field around it. Tell you, these people that work on this thing have no idea how this field works. It's a specialty field, man. It's like I got stuck with a field generator that actually just lifts occasionally. You know what I mean?
Once you've created that bubble, have you tried the radio thing yet? The radio experiment?
No, I haven't.
Yeah.
I got to pick up an old radio.
I'll tell you, somebody suggested something to me the other day that was kind of eye-opening and possible, but not sure about yet. When you're creating a bubble and it's you can pick it up in the static of an AM radio, you're creating a field, but a forced field, a field that can't be penetrated by electromagnetic signals whatsoever. So you're essentially creating a force field.
Yeah.
It ain't going to stop bullets, but there's no signal going to get inside. Cell phones don't work with my coils on. I can't run tests in the house when, people are walking around because I'll kill their phone.
Nice.
So, yeah, it's...
Turn it on when it's Thanksgiving time and the in-laws get a little crazy.
Oh, yeah. Then they don't have any phones
nice.
anymore.
Oh, yeah. You killed their phone, yeah.
That's like Wi-Fi. I have to... I can't do tests in the house anymore because I've killed 3 Wi-Fi boxes. And they keep replacing them, right? And they're like, I don't know why these things are blowing, but...
You're killing people's internet now. That's not funny, man.
Hey, Joe, I blew out one of my hearing aids the other day with my ultrasound. It just exploded in my ear.
Ouch.
Yeah. So I had to bring it in and get it replaced. Then how did it break? I have no idea.
Yeah.
No clue. It just stopped working.
What else do you say, right? I mean,
that thing's dangerous.
Well,
everything's dangerous when you got free energy sitting around you everywhere. God, you know what?
Yeah, the space is saturated.
If you hook up your table like this one right here behind me,
pressure
it's all metal. Hook it up to something like that, to the gravity flyer. Say goodnight to every electronics in the room.
I think
it just starts shattering them, and then you'll feel a field coming out and busting everything as it goes, and you'll start having to replace everything.
You're creating pressure waves inside your garage.
Yeah, and then
it's a condensed area. Yeah, so like that's what I say. If I put a shell around this thing, it would completely change how it works. That's what I'm doing in my garage. It's the shell. Yep. My garage is the shell right now, so it has to be outside.
Oh, you think that's what it is?
Except for when your shell grows exponentially huge. Like almost
how does glass react to?
See, but you don't have a Tesla coil field holding it in.
I don't need it.
That's the whole reason to put the fields on it like I do, is the Tesla coil holds in all that energy that would normally go out to the rest of your room.
Yeah.
It'll hold it in a bubble and it won't let it go.
Yeah,
you have to apply the field the right way, but it'll hold it in. I do it with high voltage all the time.
I see like I'm getting the bubble, but my bubble's like
your fields is going everywhere. It's creating a bunch of static. What I'm saying is, if you put a Tesla coil on it, it'll suck that bubble right back together. I'll talk to you about it later, but it has to do with how mine works versus how yours works, and combining them would change the whole experiment.
I want to do that.
This kind of sparks a memory. John Hutchison, back in the 80s, he had several Van de Graaff generators. He had Tesla coils. And he had a whole bunch of stuff going on at the same time. He got it into, I guess, creating that bubble that you guys are referring to. Yep. He actually made one of his laboratories disappear. It vanished.
You know what what you said? Laboratory?
You know what he doesn't
the
talk
entire
about
building
much?
disappeared.
He did that.
You know what he doesn't talk about much? Why
Where
he
did it
had to
go?
leave
He shrunk his
US
laboratory. It didn't
minister.
disappear. He shrunk it.
Hold on, guys. Gerald, what do you say?
He doesn't
Say
talk
it.
about this at all. I don't even know if he'll bring it up. He's
No,
brought
he
it up
won't.
before, but the reason why he had to get out of New Westminster in British Columbia was because
Yeah.
when he was doing tests in his apartment, things were lifting in other people's apartments. And
His
things
apartments.
were
Yes. Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
floating.
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah,
he had
When
to
he
sell
sent
that
his
building. He did an
He
experiment.
told me that.
He took the whole building, and he was done.
Yeah.
They threw him out.
Yeah. No, he told me that story personally
Yep.
in 2005.
Yep,
He
I
told
when he
know.
sent his videos to the government, they sent them back. I think I told you guys this, and they said, "Do you realize, like, if you pause it at certain frames, your items are just completely disappearing and then reappearing?"
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is basically the Philadelphia
Absolutely.
experiment that he
Where do you
recreated.
think, like, as you guys, where do you think this stuff goes? Like into an invisible spectrum, or where?
Nobody
No
knows.
idea.
Like,
Changes the frequency.
It
Bob
goes into
So
Lazar
it-
counter
says.
space.
No.
Bob
It's a-
Lazar says because stars can have so much gravity that they can bend light around them. That's
Yeah,
what
but we're
happens.
not
They
talking
go
about stars.
invisible. They don't go anywhere. They go.
That's not
invisible.
changing the gravity in it. It's
It-
changing the frequency.
Well,
It's
whatever
Yeah,
changing
you're
the,
going
the,
into
the cup or whatever that disappeared, probably its gravity properties changed,
so
and
is it
then it
getting
started bending light around itself.
disintegrated? So
No,
is
it's
it
going
It
into
started
still
bending light
there?
around itself, like the star bends light around through
It's
the
like
gravity of the
phasing in
starlight.
and out.
Same thing happening
So
to
is it
the.
still there? Is it
It's
still
probably
there?
still
No.
there, but the light's going around it, so you're not seeing it.
It's more
It's
than
going
that.
into
But
counter space.
I think
Whatever.
it's
let's
I mean,
say
that's
if
just
I
one theory.
have-
I don't know.
Okay, so if I have a stick and he's doing his experiment, and I poke it with a stick, am I gonna feel something or not really? Like, you know?
I
No,
don't
it's gone. It's
know.
gone.
It's gone.
It's gone.
Okay, so then
So it's
light's
changed.
not bending it.
So think about this.
Oh, hold on, though.
Molecules in
If
say
you create a
piece of
gravity
wood,
field to bend light, I'm sure it's doing more than just bending the light. It's bending time also.
yeah, it's changing the time
So
of
from
the
there,
energy
you can
in that system.
extrapolate what happened to the cup.
So the theory is, if you change the energy of the
It's
molecules,
in a different
whatever
time.
it is,
It's still there, but in a different time.
then when those molecules' energies change, you change the time differential on that, and it literally shifts into a different timeline. You
Yeah,
can't
so-
see it, you can't feel it because it ain't there. It's in a
No,
different time.
The cup's still in the same place, just it's just there in 1950, not 2024.
Dude,
It's in
you
the same
serious?
same cup, same table, but in 1950, or different
Change-
table,
Oh
or
my
whatever.
God,
Same
do
space.
you understand? Okay, do you understand the significance of this? It means we can actually
Gravity
send
field.
messages back to the past, or we can send
Yeah,
things
with
to
gravity
the future.
fields.
I don't know about that.
Oh, come
Technically,
on,
you
why
can
not?
with gravity fields.
Because it would take another exact same system in that timeline for you to communicate with in order for you to have that link.
That's
You
for
can't just go
bidirectional
from a hole.
communication, not one way.
The
can't-
time
yeah,
machine
it has to be
paradox.
That's
You can
for
only travel back
communication
in
back and
time as
forth,
far as you
not
made
one
the
way. You
machine.
could do one way and maybe get a message back.
So Nathan can
guys-
have one of my coils, and in 10 years from now, as I'm running the coil here, if this was to work, this is in theory, he can turn on the coil and talk to me 10 years in the past from the future because he has that identical coil, and he changes all the energy in his molecules to match the energy of the molecules of where I'm at in my time. So we're able to talk. Does that make
That's
sense?
quantum. That's quantum entanglement there.
Yeah, I guess you could call it that.
So yeah, so the
I
time
think
band,
I think you're pulling a Stargate out of phase,
right.
Maybe.
where they're just in a kind of a different area, the same area, but you can't interact with them.
But then how does that explain the fact that if you can't interact with them, wouldn't you be able to feel the same mass in the same space?
No,
Well, maybe there's a space that nobody can interact with. None of the dimensions. It's
That's
just
interesting.
It's an intermediary.
I love time
like in
paradoxes.
the
They're great.
Flash. You know the Flash, how he goes to
Well, like
Skinwalker Ranch.
the Flash
They're in
goes
a
to
different
some
phase.
place that only he can go to because he's got light speed. It's called the light force or
Wh-
whatever.
Wouldn't it be determinant that the actual location has to be the same, though?
You can't change like different locations.
That's my thought process. The location
It has to
stays
be
the same, but the energy changes, and therefore the time on that
You
changes.
guys just think
Pretty
about it
well.
this way. You're in a room, so you're filling that room with the energy, but you don't have to fill the room. You can create the bubble around yourself.
Yep.
It's not that difficult. You just have to create the right suit, like I said before, like a Tron suit, put the disc on the back,
Well, we have to think
and then
about
you
that,
walk
though, Mike.
around
This
out
is
of
heavy
phase.
stuff, man.
Yes.
That's the difference. The world still acts the same around you. The people and things in it, though, change.
Okay, but
will
now
move
my thought.
faster or slower or whatever.
It would be like if I came to you out of phase and I walked over to your tube TV, I can interact with it because of the energy, and I can write you a message on your tube TV.
Right, because that tube TV has
That's
more than
possible.
one phase. It has more than one phase, I think.
Hey guys, sorry to jump in
It's
here.
radiating. Inductive
Sorry to
reactance,
jump.
capacitive reactance, all kinds of radiations. You know.
Sorry to jump in here. I have Thomas waiting in backstage. I'd like to get him on here to get talk with him for a few minutes. Can one of you jump off and just stay backstage, and then we can pull
I'll
you guys
step out.
on after?
I'll step
Mike,
up
you'll
if you
step
want.
out. Whoever, it doesn't matter.
I'll step out. Oh, he's
Mike
gone.
stepped
Step
out,
out.
Lulu. You're already in.
Okay. All right. I'm going to add Thomas. Hey, Thomas. Welcome to the show.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
How
Hi.
are you?
I actually jumped
Hi.
over here more to listen to it because it's getting better quality over here than off of YouTube.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Just we haven't spoken before. Welcome to the show. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what stuff you're working on?
I don't know the about myself stuff, but I'm working on what I'd call replicator level 3D printer upgrades.
Oh,
Hi.
Like one of the more recent ones that I have done the experimental stage work on is using a 405 nanometer laser at 500 milliwatts. I can basically take rust and reduce it back to iron without any kind of oxygen removal process, leaving the raw iron deposited on whatever surface it's laying on.
Interesting.
The intent is to basically go both directions, though. Be able to ablate things and then whisk them away, and using electrostatic energy and the speed that it's moving, the weight and the ratio and all, and charging with different frequencies of lasers to take whatever comes off of the ablation and separate it out, so that way it can then be reused to print something else out of it.
right.
So-
So you're doing something like nano scale manipulation of matter.
I'll have to look into that. A lot of it, though, is based on instead of like grabbing the material and putting it where you want it, you flood the area, but you don't give it enough energy to bond except where you want it to bond. So it's then attracted to where you want it to go. That way you don't have to know
Right.
where it's at, because it was one of the first things I heard people complaining about was you can't really know where an atom's at because it's always in motion. It's like, why would you need to know? You know where you're with photons, you know exactly where you're putting them, and
Right.
you know by the frequency what they're going to do whenever they hit whatever it is. And something a lot of people, I guess, don't get is that when you get a reflection, the frequency of light that reflects is actually stealing energy from that part when it bounces off it. So it does the inverse of absorbing the energy from another frequency. That way you can take two
So
overlapping and basically nullify each other. So
right. So how would you cancel out that reflection?
well, that's the thing. I don't want to do that. I want to use that like a donut of reflective frequency around a dot of absorptive. So that way the center of the donut, whatever size you make that, is all that's getting charged. Everything else is being decharged. That way you can get down to a single atom sized deposition without having to have frequencies of UV that will basically destroy, or X-ray that will basically destroy whatever they're hitting. So
Right. So are you just doing this basically in your garage, so to speak, or are you doing this at a university or?
no, it is some backyard stuff. So in fact,
Homemade
I've got
lab
a
coats
whole.
the best.
I got lucky and turned a quarter of a Bitcoin into 6 Bitcoin, and before I spent a bunch of it trying to help somebody maintain their place while they were on a medical leave. I went and bought a bunch of equipment to get ready for it. So I went from like the amount of stuff that I need versus the amount of stuff or the amount of stuff I need versus the amount of stuff I have to, much, much closer. So I still have some more stuff, but most of it I'm going to build myself, like using nanopore or mesopore uh, line alumina that's been lined with like carbon nanotube material to grow my own laser diodes that are, I can hit any frequency pretty much I want. I just have to have a system to vacuum it all out, so that way those higher frequencies will not be absorbed by the gas that's in between it and the surface. So
Have you experienced any transmutation of elements?
No.
No.
No, I figure that's probably something that somebody needs to work on that when I get the Replicator 1.0 and I start mass producing those and sending them out to people. People can figure that out then, and that way we don't have to worry about, do you have enough of this or do you have enough of that? But in the meantime, you're still going to have like a pretty decent period where basically we'll go from those who have these will no longer be resting on a fiat-based capitalism and go to an actual physical-based capitalism that can't be manipulated. So, you need some gold and you got a whole bunch of carbon you processed, you can trade that versus the, more rare gold to print something out that you need to print. But when we can do something like what you're talking about, which this type of equipment would be the thing that you'd be able to, if it's possible, that would be how you'd be able to build that equipment to get precise control. So that you could take a whole bunch of hydrogen or a single hydrogen and like a mercury atom and, combine them together to get whatever you want, splitting others apart and neutralizing them too. So that way, basically they're not unstable and, continually degrade, releasing radiation and falling apart. Like the way they were discovering that the sprites off of lightning bolts neutralize radiation in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
So you basically build
Ken
one
shoulders
thing from
charged
another
clusters.
thing. So you're
Sorry?
building like whatever atom you want from other atoms without releasing its harmful effects. You're just building, from starting from something small to something bigger. Oh.
Right. Yeah. Take whatever's
Very-
common. That way, basically, you don't have to worry about whether you have enough material of the right type on hand. The whole point of this thing is a childhood dream, thanks to Star Trek, because that was the first thing I saw was that if you don't have this technology, you can't really do deep space flight, because when you get busy going somewhere, you can't just pull over halfway to Alpha Centauri to run to Walmart because something broke.
Right.
Right. You need a
Exactly.
manufacturing center or process somehow.
Right. So.
And they have a 3D printer on the ISS right now. So if they need like a plastic wrench or whatever, they could print it there and use it. So they have experimented with 3D printers in space. So
Right.
yeah,
That's the thing too, is I've used the same laser technology to take titanium dioxide white powder and break it down to turn it back into that brownish black material that forms from crystallized titanium dioxide. So an electrostatic field on it to attract the oxygen off it, since the titanium has way more weight than the oxygen, will allow printing solid titanium. So that means you can just take rust and titanium dioxide and mix it and get an iron titanium alloy that you can print with like anywhere from 500 milliwatts to 2.5 watts worth of laser power.
So you can actually produce some pretty exotic metal alloys with this.
Right. So,
and
or not just exotic metal alloys, but you can get wetting between substances that normally you don't see happening, where like they'd have to revert to using, or basically they'd have to start with something like indium to get it to wet on, say, glass, to get a metal surface that you can then bond on the indium, which then you're relying on the strength of the indium, which is not very strong. But if you can bond titanium metal straight to glass, you have a much better material when it comes to abrasion resistance and flaking and whatnot. It's not going to happen. So I mean, there's a lot of different things. With the electrostatic fields, you could probably grow quasi-crystals any way you want to. You just have to keep shifting the frequency to whatever you're wanting. I typed something in earlier that apparently didn't show up because YouTube is still censoring me. High
I
voltage.
wonder why.
Well, yeah, I was going to say high voltage. You notice, like, if you have high enough voltage, you can send hundreds of watts of power across a tiny little line and get almost no losses.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I was thinking about that, and I was always of the mindset that basically supercooling materials means that it's like the equivalent of taking what is that? It's not Rosenberg. What's the cradle? Is it Newton's cradle? The balls on the strings.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Imagine if you take those and you have them disjointed, so instead of them running in line, they're running more like this, and you drop one on the end. How much of that energy will make it to the other end, and how much will be excreted out of the sides from them trying to go sideways? A lot of that energy is going to come off to the side. It's not going to make it to the other end, and that's what a lot of our atoms are doing whenever you're trying to shove electricity through a wire. Higher voltage, though, if you've got a coating on it, that coating is a dielectric. They call it an insulator, but it is a dielectric, and it absorbs electron field energy, which means that if you have high voltage, you now have a high static pressure charge that's squeezing those atoms to keep them from moving around anyway, but allowing that electron to shoot straight through. So it may be possible just to wrap a wire with an insulator and then a conductor and an insulator and a conductor, and then two insulators on the outside, just apply a really high voltage to it, like Mylar, a millimeter thick layer that can handle up to 440,000 volts before it allows discharge through it. Then you can run 12 volts through it, and it should come through just as easily, even across a long distance on a little tiny wire. You should still be able to get all that power out the other end without losing hardly any of it.
Wow.
Instead of
cradle is a brilliant analogy.
Right, instead of cooling it down to get it to stop wiggling around, just put pressure on it to freeze it in place, like we do with a pump. But we're using an electrostatic pump instead of using. So
hold on. Can you take the stuff that you're breaking down and use it like a paste between layers, and then hit it with static electricity charge and get it to form together or sandwich together and stay there? So like you'd be creating 3 different layers, and it would stay as a solid layer once the material hardens in the center.
You might be able to. I don't know. All the stuff I'm working on is working when it comes to manufacturing is working on layers where you just build the layers up. But to keep it clean, an electrostatic field is being placed on it while there's a laser running through the area, so that way any air that tries to get in will get buffeted away by the electrostatic charge. So you only have like maybe a quarter of a millimeter of distance between the print head and what you're printing on, but you're keeping all that gas from getting in there, so you've got a pure, like, complete vacuum in between the two. So
Nice,
interesting.
That way you don't get any contamination. So if you're building those layers up, you can just build that middle layer that you're wanting, and then you drop the material on the next layer above it, and just bond it right to it. You're excreting the whatever the contaminant is that allows the material to be worked with. That's being pulled back up through the build plate or through the electrostatic plate to separate it from the rest of the area. So
that's interesting. I wonder if electromagnetic confinement would help you at all. It's like you said, compressing, right? I don't know. Just a thought.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the important thing is like on the conductivity is just keeping them not only from moving around, but also keeping them all in the same alignment, right? On what you were talking about earlier, by the way, that whole temporal thing, something that I've worked on a bit before, and actually to get to that point where you can even do spatial displacement, you have to figure out what that frequency is that the entire universe is oscillating at. And it's somewhere in that static field that we consider noise, but it's going to be really hard to detect. Like we're going to have to go through and detect all the other things and separate them out. And when we find that frequency that you just can't detect it, it's probably somewhere within one of those frequencies.
Is
Then
that
you have
what
to
is that what
Do
Floyd
you think-
Sweet's vacuum triode amplifier was doing when it was tuning into the ether? It was
I don't know.
tuned
This
to
is
the
all stuff
frequency
I've
of the
just
ether.
thought of on my own. I don't know who any of these other people are.
Do you think it's
This is all stuff that most of it comes from dreams. Like I pretty much
Wow.
pretty sure what Tesla was doing, and no one got a chance to see it. You're familiar with an electroscope? What it is?
Yep.
Okay. Put a separate plate inside there, a third plate to go with those foils. Has the wire, instead of running to your input, it's running to a ground, so that when the foils expand, one of them will touch that ground out, releasing that power, causing them to collapse back down. So you get a
Right.
pulse of power running through it, and then it starts expanding again as the voltage builds, and it pops again. This keeps the voltage level that's up in the atmosphere from being at ground zero by it constantly being touching to ground. Because if you put an antenna up in the air and you ground it out on the ground, your zero level is going to go across the surface of the earth and then up over where that antenna is at and then back down. It's not going to gain any voltage from being up there. But if that's disconnected so that it has to fill that foil up to make that ground, that allows that voltage to go up in that area and then collapse. With the pulsing, what he was doing in a dream that I had, it was causing that voltage to draw power out of the atmosphere from it pulsing up and down in voltage. So, what I saw was he had two electroscopes set up, and he had on his transformers, he had 3 coils. There were 2 primaries and 1 secondary. And the 2 primaries wrapped in inverse. So that way, basically, when it went out of the first electroscope and through the coil and dumped into the second electroscope, it would then return back through the secondary coil going the opposite direction before it went to final ground. So you got a positive and a negative shift on the AC wave that it was generating from that static field. And then you just do whatever you wanted with it from that point, and then you could transmit that information. The energy. I mean, that is information, even if it's not, intelligible information. If it's just a general constant like wave, kind of like the carrier wave of FM waves, So, and then you can just capture it anywhere.
Well, I can confirm the antenna power situation, because with my coil, if I run a line up a pole and put a toroid, aluminum toroid at the top, and I take the end of the secondary and I ground it, my primary becomes a pickup coil, and the voltages I get are insane. I'm actually just about to do an experiment on video for that. I have an old barn that has to be torn down and a pole that goes up 30 feet. And I'm going to run line between the barn and the pole, insulated from both. And then I'm going to tap it in the center and run it through my coil like an antenna, like what you're talking about. So because there's a primary and a secondary, my secondary will act as the antenna, at least the input of the secondary, and the output of the secondary will go to ground. And then my primary becomes like a step-down transformer. At least that's the idea. So
are you building your coil system the way the Wardenclyffe Tower plans were designed, with the 2 primaries? Because there's like 3 coils in that, and one of them is like a step stage where it's more like having like 1.5 coils. So you got the primary coil that's having an effect on the secondary coil, and then that gets pumped into that long coil that comes off it. Whereas the other ones were like they were kind of like the successor to the Pelletron. So they were just meant to be a voltage step-up mechanism that you could then dump directly onto that, instead of using some other generic form of like electrostatic generation from a mechanical process. Instead, you could use that to charge your electron buckets in a Pelletron to do whatever it is that they were wanting to do, whether it was like atomic acceleration or whatever. So
I'm using geometrical formed open core electromagnetic coils. So they collect energy. It's like 1,500 feet of copper. It's 750 feet wound one way, and then 750 feet wound 180 degrees out of phase. So it allows me to collect more energy than at least it seems more energy than I'm putting in. But my third coil for what you were referencing is part of the pickup coil system I have on the outside. So there's 12 coils on the outside that are 120 wraps each. They're ferrite cores, and I pick up energy from those. So that's.
Are you presenting your thing tomorrow?
I'm trying to. I'm almost done. I'm so close. I'm because I had to add something to it. I had another breakthrough, so I had to add something else to the paper, and that's why I wasn't ready for tonight. Otherwise, I'd be doing a presentation now. But yeah.
My God, man, leave something for the history books.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good. I'm just really excited to see your presentation.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping to get this experiment into the presentation, but we'll see because the place I have to do it at is an hour and a half out of town. It's
Well,
the place to do the experiment.
I'll tell you this: do the experiment another time. Let's just get what you have now. And
Well,
we've been waiting 2 months.
Yeah, that's
You
not
guys are
my
working with.
fault.
You guys are working with all that high voltage. Have you used any of this to make your own electrodes?
I might actually inadvertently be making an electric right now because my coil, when I put it in epoxy resin, had no bubbles. But after resonating it and doing experiments with it, I have multiple spheres inside this thing that look like they're coming out of the wire.
That's what I've been asking. Everyone that I have talked to that's made electrodes has used heat to get the atoms in whatever the material it is to be more fluid, so the electrostatic field can then alter the way they're formed to form the negative and positive triboelectric charge on the surface. But no one has used something that's in a more solvent-like state. I mean, that's still a chemical reaction going on, but it should still work. If that works, then it should still work with like xylene and styrofoam dissolved in it as a paint, and then put that field on it while the xylene is evaporating from it, which is a really good material to work with something like that because it dries so slow. It leaves a glass smooth surface on both sides of whatever it is you've dissolved in it. So in fact, they use it as a slower so that whenever you're spraying something and you want it to be glossy, it's got more xylene. The stuff that's matte finished has less xylene because that allows it to dry faster, so it comes out rougher.
Right.
So the smoother the surface, that means that your negative or positive triboelectric field is going to be lined up perfectly along the surface of that smooth surface to be able to control its shape. So
interesting.
I just wondered about that because you're talking about collection, and if you have a positively charged electrostatic field from all the atoms sticking out of that side that are buffering up against the thing that you're pulling all that electron field energy from the atmosphere, it'll have a stronger draw.
Yep.
You could literally draw down below the zero voltage field in the atmosphere at that point.
Yeah.
Before it pops.
Yeah. My coil does get, I guess you could say zero field. My coil gets really cold if I'm pulling large loads out of it, and the loads are resistive loads.
That's very interesting. That's the thing that I'm working on for my energy source for all this equipment is based on triboelectric inverse materials with a small gap between them, and a coating of a neutral material like graphene or I call it leadphene, basically a sheet of a single atomic layer of lead, something that basically has that 4 electron field, so that it can receive or give up electrons. That way it won't interfere with that triboelectric effect that's underneath it, so that when the air bouncing back and forth between the two of them, when it hits the positive one, it's going to give away its electrons to it. When it hits the negative one, it's going to pick up electrons off it and then back again. That way it builds up a field, and that conductor will pull that energy off of it.
So it's like a dielectric. It's like a dielectric capacitor, right? An electric.
Almost, except that you've got free ranging gas moving back and forth in it. So as long as it's still warm, it's generating power. The more power you pull from this thing, though, the colder it will get. because you're literally
Right.
converting thermal energy into electric energy, not allowing thermal energy to move through it, but rather you're just literally nullifying the thermal energy
Well,
because it's being stored away as an electrical potential. So
Mm.
yeah, it's going to be a big discovery when they finally figure it out, because apparently you can't turn thermal heat,
right,
electricity or energy into
you're touching on the entropy thing. This is reversing entropy.
Yeah, well, I use entropy. It's part of the
And-
system. I use
Well,
70.
yeah. That's the
Yeah.
whole point of the black hole. The black hole is the entropy, ultimate entropy system that basically breaks matter back down, and that's where all this dark matter, the effect that they consider dark matter is coming from. It's deactivated matter. As soon as it gets
Well,
activated again, it'll recombine into hydrogen again, and we start all over again.
I had
So-
mentioned
Right.
this with Nathan on a live a few days ago when I was running my system at, I think it was 24 volts or 28, I can't remember. I just decided to see what would happen, and I took my lighter and I put it in the center of the open core, and my voltage changed on my pickup coils. So, and that's just a
throwing that
regular.
plasma in between there.
What's that?
Throwing that plasma in there between the gap with the flame. That flame is nothing more than plasma.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
But you shouldn't be able to pick that up, though, no?
well,
Because then isn't it like,
atoms shouldn't be able to quantum entangle either. But if you take a magnet wheel with a bunch of magnets stuck to it on a really good bearing set, and you put another magnet wheel on the other side of the room, also on a good bearing set, and you start spinning one of them, the other one will spin, even though there's no physical connection between the two of them, just because they're magnetically connected.
Yeah.
There's the reason why you get these weird, like spooky action at a distance, because they're less affected. They've got a better bearing system than any metal bearing you can put together, or any other type of bearing that we can build in that magnet wheel, because they're literally free floating in space.
Yep.
Just
Right.
whizzing around, interlocking with each other. So
Zero resistance.
Yep. So as close to it as you can get. I mean, you're going to have the resistance from the effect of each other and their fields, but we're talking field interference, not physical, like grinding interference. So that's
coils don't heat up at all. I can make them heat up. I know how, but when I'm running them, they don't. Heat's not an issue. In fact, my issue is I'm blowing horizontal deflection transistors that are good for 1600 volts because I'm creating too much. So yeah, working on some things. It's interesting where I'm getting.
So you need higher voltage transistors.
Yeah. I may not need transistors at all in the near future.
I was gonna say you might, if I get when I get done with the testing, if I get some positive results, I'll shoot you some info on how to make your own transistors using Starlight. That might help. So I don't know. You guys know what Starlight is.
You talking about the material Starlight?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a good idea. If I'm right,
So think this way: remove whatever ideas you had of how it was made before, and instead use your activator, because they use baking soda in the generic ones.
Yeah.
Change that to something else as your activator, so that you have two different batches of material. That one whenever it forms, has a positive dopant, the other one has a negative dopant. Paint the two on top of each other, heat them up so they exfoliate, turning back into that pure carbon, which is a semiconductor, but with those dopants in it. Like one side has phosphorus in it, the other side has boron in it. You now have
I never
diode.
thought of that.
But this is the thing, though. That's a form of carbon-based aerogel. So imagine how good that is at thermal resistance while being very good at conducting electricity. And that's what makes a good Peltier. A good Peltier is a diode junction that thermal energy will not travel easily through, but the electricity can freely flow through.
That could have some profound implications if put into the right system. That's
could be a secret to making much more efficient and easy to make at home based solar cells too. That instead of them getting hotter, they actually get colder while the sun's hitting them.
Interesting.
The more power you allow them to generate, As long as you close the circuit, pull the power off, they start pumping that heat out and evacuating into the atmosphere, getting colder.
Definitely
Just from
interested in that data.
So,
Yeah. One thing I haven't tried, I'd like to try is put my coil in front of a solar panel at night just to see if it picks up energy. I don't know. I don't know if it would. Because it's photons, right, that we're dealing with when you're talking about solar panels. And when it comes to this coil system.
well, hold on. This is my theory on that, though. Photons in a vacuum, the actual physical particle, is just the speed. The reason it moves at the speed that it's moving at is because that's the speed it requires for electrons to be evaporated from whatever they're in. So there's not an ultimate speed for it. That just happens to be the speed that it happens at, and we don't have a way of accelerating beyond that. Just like there's a speed that you require to escape the body of liquid, the bonding that goes on beyond between the hydrogen and oxygen and water, that you have to accelerate until you reach that point in order to create steam. And
That's
that
an
point
interesting way of looking at it.
So I mean, if that's true, you could prove it by basically using your own electron emissions directly instead of using light. You're hitting it with electrons. The important thing is
I
the
want
amount
to
of
go try it right now. No?
Yeah, you just need the right amount of potential, so that way you don't overcharge the solar cell, because that's why some light doesn't work, because it overcharges it, so it causes a bridging action where the energy, the solar cell just short circuits itself. I found that just putting a piece of Lexan polycarbonate in front of a solar cell actually increases your wattage. I tested the amperage coming off it and the voltage. The voltage will drop a little bit, but the amperage comes up high enough, it makes up more than the losses in voltage. And that wasn't even the reason I was doing that. I was just wanted to see if, since UV doesn't do any good at generating power in a solar cell, I wanted to see if I could block that since it turns into heat. And maybe it's even affecting the solar cell the way UV affects a photo. You leave it sitting out in the sun, what happens? It eventually
gets
fades.
all yellow and it fades.
It fades, right. So if you can interfere with that destructive measure while letting the rest of the light through, your solar cell should last a lot longer.
That's interesting.
But it looks like it may actually be by blocking out the unnecessary frequencies of light, you stop them from counteracting the energy that's created by the necessary frequencies. So I haven't had a chance to do it yet, but at some point, you guys have seen polarizers where you use a quarter wave and half wave rectifier.
Yeah.
That way you can get, instead of it just turning black and clear, it actually creates color effect.
Yeah.
That system can actually hit a single nanometer of light. You can actually tune that so that you can actually pick a nanometer, a specific nanometer frequency of light, and that's the only one that's coming through at like 97%, while only about 3% of all the other frequencies are getting through.
That could come in handy.
Yeah. So you can build a great big one of those things and put it in front of, like, a mirror, and then have that go down through like a lens to go on to
whatever a filter. It's a filter.
Right.
You're filtering the solar.
Right. I thought about using that with water, because I'm sure there's probably 2 frequencies of light that water reacts to, and everything else is basically just noise. It interferes with it. So if you can get those 2 frequencies hitting that container of water that you're electrolyzing, it'll reduce the amount of power of electricity you actually need to put into it to break the water apart, because it's already charged by those 2 frequencies.
Right.
So,
and you structure water like sunlight. UV actually structures water. Right. So
we have a viewer in chat asking, do you have any videos or anything that you can show us?
I think the only thing I've got right now is one of those color polarizer units. I did a couple of those where I basically was just rotating them around, but they're on a different YouTube channel. Let me see here.
Thomas, you've been on APEC before.
Anything you can pull up would be great.
Yeah, I
if
have.
not, we'll save it for another stream.
That's where I remember meeting you. Yeah, you were on APEC a few times.
Let's Let's see.
So let's not all talk at once.
Sorry, I didn't mean to kill the mood or anything.
No, you didn't.
No,
You didn't. Check this out. You guys seen this book before?
Oh, this is actually one that I've got that's probably useful too. You guys are talking about the magnets, and you were talking about epoxy. I crushed
Yep.
some neodymium magnets, peeled all the chrome off it, right? Just put it on a steel anvil, and then took a hammer and just tapped it to break it up into powder. Mixed the powder into epoxy, and then in a Ziploc bag, and then I laid that Ziploc bag on a magnet.
Hmm.
And I actually ended up with a magnet that had a magnetic field only on one side.
Oh, really?
Huh.
Wow.
My guess is because when you look at it from the side, you can see it's solid black material on one side, but as you get closer to the other side, it turns into these thorns or spikes coming off it, the way like ferrofluid forms.
Yeah.
So my guess is because it's oriented properly, that the magnetic field is coming out the sides until you get to the very tip of that, and that's creating magnetic destruction on that side. Like you could put it any direction at all on something, and it would flip over to the other side. If you had it on the side that had that no magnetic
That's
field, it
cool.
would keep flipping over to try to stick to the other side on a piece of steel. And
Wow.
I mean, the whole point was to try to find a way to take all these magnets that are the wrong shape and make them the right shape.
Yeah.
They're not very strong though, so we need to come up with a way to basically create that electrical connection that happens in the crystal structure whenever it's formed, to have an amplification of like the magnetic field, or I should say an amplification of the magnetic field collapse, because that's
Right.
the other thing I found. I thought the higher the end, the longer the reach would be for the magnets, but it's actually not.
Okay,
So the
You have
reach
to
is much
complement the
shorter.
field geometry to the crystal.
Right.
Well,
So-
you got me thinking here, and this is a question for everybody. So, if I was to say take a long iron rod and heat it to the point of like almost liquid, or for that matter, pour a new rod and have my coil surrounding it, and I was to pulse it, if you were to get the domains going all one direction, that creates a magnet, correct? And just a magnet?
I don't think it'll create the domains going the same direction. I think what you're going to get, like you see whenever metal cools, is instead of it being disorganized, you're going to see the domains constantly flipping back and forth. But the ends will be facing either toward one end or the other, and that's where your magnetic field, I know, comes from with the iron. Like a neodymium magnet is not made of neodymium; it's made of iron, and then it's doped with neodymium and boron, and it's two neodymium and one boron to every 14 iron atoms, which coincidentally form a very specific iron crystalline shape. So what you're getting is a reflector in the middle and two magnetic lenses on the ends in those paramagnetic material of the neodymium, so that it can basically take all that energy that's coming from those 14 atoms that are linked up like that and concentrate it coming out of both ends, instead of it just being willy-nilly, so it ends up interfering with the other crystals adjacent to them. So I've still been trying to get some people to try the same thing. At some point I'll probably have to do it myself, of just like I don't know if you're familiar with soldering with other materials other than just your tin, lead, and antimony and whatnot, but
Silver.
bismuth, you can use bismuth just like regular tin. You just throw down the rosin core flux on it, and then heat the surface up and drop the bismuth down on there, and it'll melt and bond right to the steel.
Really?
So that's kind of the thing, is to build a stack where I've got 14 times the amount of material that's in the bismuth layer of iron on either side of it, and then cap it off on both ends with aluminum foil that doesn't have any coating on the aluminum, or take the coat the surface by friction spin welding, where you just take a rod of aluminum and press down on it while it's spinning fast, and just paint it with aluminum metal, because it'll bond right to the surface as soon as it knocks the oxygen from between the iron and the aluminum. Honda was the one that patented that, because they were trying to weld like aluminum rods to their steel cases for their motors, and that was the best weld they could come up with, was just taking the rod, spin it up fast, and push it down on it. while holding it still, and then turn it off and unchuck and let the aluminum rod go, and it would be bonded right to it.
Wow, I'll have to
So-
remember that.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
So I don't know what all metals it will work like that. It's kind of like cold welding, where like if
Yep.
you have no oxygen on something and you take two pieces of metal and touch them, they bond right together. But you're forcing the oxygen away instead of using a vacuum. So it means you're going to have some waste. But hey, I mean, it's a lot less waste than going the other route. So trying to use
Yeah,
some
that's
sort of
awesome.
like mechanical and like gas arc welding and stuff like that with all the sputter and whatnot. This doesn't even heat the material up and distort it either. In fact, that's what they're using to put all their rockets together. The casings, they roll it up so the edges are up against there, and then they take a rough like an auger and run through there, and it just grinds the material up as it's moving down through there so that it meshes together to form one solid piece. So there's only the heat of the friction is what's generated by it. So that way there's no crystal deformation or anything like that. That way when it gets hot or cold, it doesn't cause it to pop and break and fall apart.
That's how they make perfect welds.
Yeah, Tory doesn't want anybody to know because that's like a big secret for their rocket making. But that's basically all it is. I mean, Honda already spilled the beans on it. They just never tell anybody they're using that same technology.
Wow. We have people in my chat like screaming, you need to write a book.
All this stuff has already been done, though. I mean, that's the thing with my 3D manufacturing upgrades. They're already being used somewhere in the industry on like a industrial level. That's why I have the confidence I have that bringing them together will work as well as it will, because they're already being used elsewhere and extremely effectively. So
right.
it's just nobody's taking the time to put the piece together, and you got a lot of lack of crosstalk whenever it comes to industry scientists because they got to keep their trade secrets,
Yep.
So-
NDAs.
Right. Well, and this is the thing. What I'm planning on putting out is going to break the back of the corporate structure because you won't need a big, 50,000 square foot facility to print out a cell phone. You'll be able to do it on a desktop and use an old pieces of old broken cell phones to feed the machine to make them.
Nice.
So
you got a lot of fans over here, man.
Oh my god, this is like really
Speaking
cool.
of printers, Nathan, I'm gonna get that printer you told me about for $100, and I'm gonna call you on that. Get you to give me a hand running it.
Absolutely.
If you want some really tough parts, look up Tallman 230. There's no printer on the market that uses filament that can't use this stuff. It's right around the temperature range of ABS, but it's nylon and polycarbonate. There's I don't know if they have something else in it or if it's a specific type of nylon, but it melts at like 230 degrees. So it'll melt just as easily as PLA or ABS, but the stuff is incredibly tough. I replaced parts in a Shark vacuum that had broken on the rollers.
Oh
The
yeah,
brush.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I
broke one. I mean, they broke one from cat and dog hair and all the other stuff.
The little round things with the little square on the end.
Yeah, I printed one of those up, popped it in there, and outlasted the other one.
Wow, I'm surprised.
So I made another one, put it on the other end. As far as I know, it was still working whenever I left there, and that was like 5 years of use, and it broke. The first one broke in like a year and a half.
I gotta get into 3D printing.
That Tallman 230, and I mean, I make stuff every now and then, even just using a 3D printer pen. So, if you can get the hot ends, you can get the really good stuff because it's got quite a bit more stiffness to it. The Tallman 910, it's almost as stiff as polycarbonate, but it's also got the unbreakability that the nylon has from them blending the two together. So I don't know if anyone else is using the blend or not, but
not yet.
Mike, I think Mike wants to come on. Let me step out because he might want to talk to
I can
Thomas.
step out.
He's got a lot. No.
Put me in the background so I can listen, but.
No. Mike wants to talk to you, so I think I should step out, and then Mike should step back in.
Should I be worried? I want to talk to you outside.
No. All right.
Mike's fun.
All right.
So have you guys ever heard of the book Order Out of Chaos?
No.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
haven't.
Man's New
Yeah,
Dialogue.
I've heard of it.
I just got it. It's an old book. Well, older. It's on, there's quite a few parts on gravity in here. So I'm going to read it and get back to you. It was recommended through Jeremy Reese.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thought I'd bring it up as we were waiting for Mike. So,
Yeah,
Say my uncle
Mike's
had
here.
some strange thoughts on gravity. He, for an anti-gravity rocket propulsion system and generator, he was saying that a rod of mica, copper caps for the field generation, and then drop 2 rings on it that you could charge negative and positive, creates a propulsion. I experimented with the sheet design for the gravity field generator, which is mica and copper, but as an antenna on walkie-talkies, and we were able to get some insane distances off of like one of those sets of the realistic like Radio Shack with the little yellow button,
Right. Yep.
gray walkie-talkie and 9-volt battery. Yep. We had a constant communication. It was actually clearer than across the street whenever a friend of mine went over vacation from Tulsa, Oklahoma to Cincinnati, Ohio.
wow.
So I don't know if that's because we were using another type of energy source, or if it was just because I accidentally made a fractal array antenna because we were making the copper part, etching it by just painting this stuff on by hand as teenagers. So they were not that great looking.
Might have been both.
Might be.
Right.
So
interesting.
Something to play around with. I mean, I'm not even sure what type of minerals are even in the mica that you buy. It was just those windows for furnaces that we were using. So
yeah, who knows what it is.
Well, they say mica capacitors are probably some of the best. I don't even know if they even make mica capacitors anymore.
They do. They're the ceramic, no?
Yeah.
No, ceramic's different.
Film.
Well, so some of them are some of the ceramic capacitors have mica in between the two conductive plates. So it just depends on what you're getting. I'd always heard that like, you know, people talk about glass and Teflon and all this other stuff. I didn't realize that there's more than one component to your dielectric constant. So you've got like not only the resistance to barrier breaking, but you also have that just comes from the ordering of the material, but also you can generate a barrier resistance by absorption, which is what they found with the what is it, the CCTO? It's copper calcium titanate. So like your dielectric constant on like the high end of the spectrum with like Teflon, like a 7. But then this stuff has got a dielectric constant that goes way off that scale at like anywhere from 100 to 250,000.
Yeah, so, Jeremiah Pop was talking about that recently.
Yeah. In fact, that's where I first heard about it, and I had to go do a lot of digging and research. I've got most of the materials. I still have to make some copper oxide for the mix to make the ceramic clay to fire some up. But I told him I was going to make some because we were going to see if we could make some asymmetric capacitors. So some spherical ones. So hopefully we can use a better wetting method so we don't have to use indium for you know, the conductor to bond to that ceramic material when it's done. So
indium's a little pricey.
Yeah. Well, it's not as durable though either. I mean, there's better materials when it comes to, you know, the other traits that they have besides the wetting aspect. So if we can get those other things to wet to it, like getting copper to bond directly to it, or using silver, or even better, use thorium doped silver. You know.
Yeah, if you can get your hands on it.
Mike, if you want to put your diagram up there, we can.
Yeah. You know what? Before you do that, I hate to say this, but I have to bail. I got the stink eye. Yeah. Some things I got to do before tomorrow.
Yeah, we're gonna be signing off soon. We're just gonna show Mike's circuit there, and then we'll call it a night.
All right. Well, it was good talking to you, Thomas. Hopefully, you'll come back on again. I'm sure we can have some deep conversation.
Actually, I'd like to get your. You got a YouTube channel?
I do. It's WPG Enlighten 4 Truth 2. These guys will give me the link.
Yeah.
I don't remember it. It's kind of a weird name, but it is what it is. Yeah.
I was say the other channel that I was going to pull that from is Morph Trust, and nobody gets that either. So
yeah,
it's meant to be like Morph, like Amorpheus, and Trust,
yeah,
because
okay.
I set it up separately as like a
Over and over
trusted
and over.
secret.
But what you really want to do is you want to go as fast
What was
as
it?
you can.
Email account, and then
with
I ended
some
up making the
capacitor.
YouTube channel off of
Very
that.
simple fact. You want to put a lot of this radiant energy.
All right.
to the
Well, it was
source.
good talking to you. Get the link off of them. My email's on my channel. And it was good talking to you guys all. Thanks for bringing me on, Mike.
Yeah. Yeah.
See you,
Thanks, Gerald.
Good, Joe.
Thanks, Gerald. Have a good
Take care.
night.
See you,
Hello,
Nate.
John.
You're in the background there, so we'll talk to you guys all real soon.
Hey,
Thanks.
before you go into anything else,
Good.
the guy running this show, the Faraday
Yeah.
Research, have you you were doing some stuff with ultrasonic, right?
Yes.
For
Yeah,
energy
the
injection.
piezo transducer.
Okay,
Yeah,
have you
the
tried
transducers.
taking anything like aluminum metal and dropping it in a non-oxidizing organic solvent and hitting it with the ultrasonic to break that aluminum down into like nanoparticles?
I've never tried that.
I the last time I had a chance to try that, I got one of those little 3-liter units, the 40
Right.
what is it 40 kilohertz they run at or something like that. It's not like super
Right.
high frequency, but
Just, yeah,
still
yeah, the ultrasonic
But-
cleaners.
the stuff turns blue as the
Oh.
aluminum is breaking down in it. So my thought was,
So
it's
what
got a
is
lot
it?
more explosive power. So if you can make it deoxidize like that, you could add it to things that like you need more punch, more oxidizing punch, like rocket fuel and whatnot. It'd probably make a much more powerful rocket fuel. But the stuff you're working on, I don't know what all you could do with that. I mean, that'd be.
Oh, you just gave me a really, really, really good idea. I'm making crystal power cells, like quantum magnetics, and he uses certain materials in it, and there's a lot of oxides that create the reaction to make electricity. That might be something interesting that I might want to try.
Yeah, I saw a
Some
long time ago
experiment.
somebody was making crystal cells, and
So you use the
the power would
ultrasonic
drop
cleaner.
way down, but then they just keep making power for years afterwards.
Yeah,
And I was looking
that's
at what he was
right.
doing.
So,
I'm like, you were using this guy was using like water glass as part of it. And I don't know if
yeah, I'm
you
using.
realize this, but the power you generate will actually extract the sodium from it, leaving quartz crystal material behind, which is piezoelectric.
That's right, and that's what I have in my cell.
So now any vibration is
So-
generating power. Even just sitting there, the thermal energy in it,
Yep.
making the little atoms jiggle around, are generating electricity off of that.
Yep, that's exactly what it's doing. Yep, like the
So I
cell
guess
I just made now. Here, actually, I have one running right now. I'll show you. And I'm predicting that this cell here should last 5 to 6 years. Let me change my camera here.
Does it swell as time goes on?
Yeah.
Okay.
I use a special material in there when the crystal it can expand. I use silicon carbide, and what will happen when it starts extracting energy? It'll expand up to 300 times.
Oh
So
God!
I use a
So
special.
that's why your cell's going to stop working. Eventually, it's going to break that glass. We got to
Well,
figure out a way to
I'm-
basically limit the amount of swelling so
Well-
it gets exactly the right amount, but not go beyond it, and then
Yeah.
it'll probably last forever. There won't
Yeah.
be a
Well, I'm
lifespan.
not. Well, there's no glass, no physical glass in it. So hold on, let me.
Did
Mike,
you
can you
use
turn
water
off the
glass
screen
doing it?
share real quick? We can't see your.
Oh yeah.
Can you turn that off?
Oh right.
There you
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So here's the light I have running right now,
Right.
and I got 4 cells. They're all running in series. All right.
That's good. I noticed that some of those crystal cells, if you tried to run them in series, you didn't get any more voltage out of them. Being able to get that
like-
extra voltage is definitely a
Well,
major, over.
Well, I can right now. Each cell's putting out about 1.6 volts, and
Oh,
each
wow.
cell's putting out well over 500 milliamps.
That is strange why the
So-
voltage doesn't go up in series. That's not normal.
Yeah, there's something very, very anomalous
More like
happening.
it's more like a current cell, not so much a voltage cell.
Right.
Well, the most power that I actually got out of the cell was about 2.18 volts at about 1.5 amps.
It's multiplying the current with the series link, not the voltage.
And no, the voltage is multiplying. If you put them in series, I can get as much voltage as I want.
Oh, I thought you said it
I
wasn't.
just keep. No, it does. It
Well,
does
no, that
increase
I was the
voltage.
one who was saying that was a major hurdle to overcome because a lot of other people I
Yes.
saw doing that, they couldn't get that to work. That like the voltage coming out of one would actually nullify the voltage on the next one or something.
Right. So I got two
Typically,
plates.
they add typically when you run the series.
So I'm not going to say exactly what I have in the middle, but I have two graphite plates side by side. One is altered slightly to create a differential of resistance between the from the other plate. So the anode is going to have a slight increase in resistance than the cathode. All right. I use a polyethylene glycol dry. It's basically a dry cell. There's and then after that, I have a jelly substance that I put in there, and I mix a whole bunch of elements in that jelly. And one of them is silica. So when silica gets charged, it expands up to 300 times. So if you don't have that jelly substance in there, it could actually destroy the cell. It'll actually crack the graphite.
Right, right.
So when it does expand, it expands in the jelly. So
well, what kind of
that
graphite
is-
are you using? Are you using like a graph foil, like the flexible stuff, or are you
I'm-
using solid block
no.
graphite cut in flat plates?
Yeah, I'm using, well, these ones here, I'm using a graphite ingot. So it's rock hard.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
Now the new cell, these ones are small. They're only about 1.5 inches wide by 3 inches long. My new one is 12 by 12 inches. So
We'll say,
we were able to, we did a test, just a simple galvanic test with basically magnesium, salt water on a rag, and then have the two graphite plates together. We were getting 1.7 volts at about 17 amps.
wow.
So you make gains on the square inches of space. So the bigger the cell in size, the higher current you're going to get. So these cells here, they're putting about 1.5 to 2 amps. The 12-inch cell, I'm expecting a lot more. So
Very impressive
interesting
work.
cell.
Hmm.
So I got the I'm actually the new graphite. I replaced it with pure graphite, and it's going to be laminated on an acrylic sheet. And I'm going to have two of them, two 12-inch plates, and then I built my mix on the inside. So we're getting some pretty interesting. I had one of my test cells ran for almost 4 months, no problem. And where you think it would die off, it just keeps pumping. The energy's coming from somewhere. And still, I really, honestly don't.
My
know where
guess
this
is it's not a
power is
chemical
coming
reaction. You're getting an electron exchange because of the imbalance you've got that's coming from that thermal vibration. The only way you're going to stop that power is to drop that to absolute zero. If there's any
Right.
thermal energy around, it's going to generate more power.
Right. So if I put my hand on those cells, just the heat from my hand, the power goes up.
Yep. There you go. Just don't
So
overheat
there is
it.
No, just the heat of my hand, a couple degrees,
Right.
hotter than what it is. The power goes up, it climbs.
Hmm.
That's
So
cool. It's like a
there-
supercharged solar
right.
panel.
Kind of, but it doesn't actually need physical light to work.
Right.
I think it's,
Yeah.
I think what's happening is there's quantum tunneling happening between the two plates, where there really isn't a galvanic action happening at all. Somehow the electrons or the ions are traveling from plate to
Wow.
plate by a means of a quantum force involved. That's why they call it quantum tunneling. It finds its way.
That's exactly what
Regardless.
a viewer just chatted in. Should have almost no galvanic action. So he's spot on that. Spot on,
Well, I'm
Elijah.
wondering if you can nullify the oxidizing potential that you see
I've already figured it out.
in
I've
oxidized
already
cells
figured it
using
out.
citric acid or something else like that. That's a
No,
or not citric, but the ascorbic acid. Something that's an oxygen
like
scavenger, but it's not powerful enough
yeah,
to stop the oxidizing from happening. It just undoes it every time it
right.
happens.
Well, what
Or just build a vacuum
there's actually
chamber for every cell you make.
no, there's two substances that I found out will actually greatly retard the oxidation process. So instead of my cell lasting, if it didn't have any protection, it lasts maybe 2 years. Well, now I can probably double it now.
Nice.
I might
nice.
lose some of the I might lose some of the current, but if each cell's putting out say half an amp, and I got 18 cells in series, well, guess what? I got a lot of amperage behind it now, and the voltage to boot.
Let's
So
say
now I can pulse.
adding that to the lithium-based cells that I made to figure out how they're making rechargeable cells. Took the cells before I added that. If you fully discharge them, it ruins them. You can fully discharge them and it doesn't ruin them. You can still charge them right back up.
See,
I don't know
if you
how much
charge,
extra life it gives it, but if it does, I mean,
one thing I do know with these cells, if you do put an exterior charge on it, you will destroy it.
right,
So as soon as you make it, it's on and it has no off switch.
right.
That's it. It's on. So these ones here, these should last 4 to 6 years because I found the element that protects and slows down the oxidation process of one of the elements that I use in my device. Yeah, it's out there. The information's out there. I took this idea from a guy named Michael Kantz. He ran a YouTube channel called Quantum Magnetics, and he made silicate carbide power cells. He was working on it for probably 30 years. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2022. He actually had a provisional patent on that cell. I can't find the patent. It's gone. I don't think it went through. So, what information that he actually did provide on that cell, I've been decrypting what he's been saying and actually trying to back engineer what he has done.
A lot of stuff don't get through nowadays.
Yeah.
But there's stuff that
So,
is getting through too. You've got people that are getting patents for over Unity devices now, and it used to be that anything that claimed to be over Unity or a perpetual motion immediately was kicked to the side, and then you'd have to go through a long court
It don't
battle
matter
to
if you
force
patent
them
it
to
or
give
not.
to you.
It's not going to get through.
So,
Patented or open source, nobody's going to get it.
well, this is why I said a lot
So-
of these people who are trying to push these things through. I think honestly, the smarter way, if you really want to make it make a difference, use it to give yourself an advantage on some business that you're running. You know, I have a
The only
thermal
way it's going to
diode
make a
system.
difference if it's as simple
Yeah.
as putting a square in a square hole.
Okay,
Then it's
well,
gonna-
and that's what the
perfect.
thermal diode is. The thermal diode basically
Okay.
pulls heat out of a chamber and pumps it out into the open atmosphere. And it literally is nothing more than getting the distance between thermal blankets, the right distance, and facing all of them with the metallized side facing the same direction that you want the heat to move. Because you get, I don't know if you realize this.
Polarizing the heat.
I didn't realize why it was working the way it was until I found this out recently, like within the last 5 years. The air around you, if you're at sea level, is still 99.9% vacuum. Only 1,000th of the volume around you is actually some sort of solid gas particle moving around, and it's moving around at, surprise, surprise, the average speed is the speed of sound. That's why sound travels the speed it does, right? So that means that you've got a lot of vacuum between those two, that the only way for the energy to travel from one side to the other without a gas particle picking up heat and then touching something and discharging it is to turn into infrared radiation. A Mylar blanket is a dual layer material that one side absorbs 100% of the IR and it reflects 100% of the IR, which means that once it travels out of that, if it's trying to come back as IR, it just keeps getting kicked back to the other side until eventually it radiates out the other side. I took a $400 a month electric bill from the AC during the summer by just covering 6 windows and dropped it to $100 a month. I did some testing on the window with just 4 layers of this material up there with a little bit of air gap in between each layer. And the backside of that material was at 65 degrees and nothing in the house could drop below 67 degrees from the air conditioner. This was inside of a box that the bottom half was open. The sun was coming straight in and hitting the curtain that was behind it, that it was encapsulated inside the windowsill. And that heat was rising. It was still sucking that heat out so fast it was keeping that window at 65 degrees. I mean, that's one of those things that, like, people are going to be like, oh, there's no way that it can be as great as that, because, you know, if something sounds like it too good, then it to be true, then it probably is. Right?
Tungsten will transmit better. It'll, you know, transmit electricity better the hotter it gets.
Yeah. I'm not sure about the tungsten metal. I'm pretty sure tungsten carbide will, though, because semiconductors, a lot of them. The semiconductors, the hotter they get, the better the current they carry.
The one in
which
the
is why LEDs, you have to
bulbs
restrain them
that are
when
made
they
out
burn
of
up. Right.
Well,
Yeah. When it hits black body radiation levels, probably it's not the tungsten is carrying the power more easily. It's the fact that you're generating plasma around it if there's any argon in there.
You think so?
And that plasma is going to be more conductive than any metal.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So,
right. So maybe the tungsten has something to do with creating the plasma.
Right. Well, I was gonna say there's a duality there. Like I said, metals usually, the more power you push through them, the hotter they get, the more resistance they build. Whereas semiconductors, which are crystals, the more power you shove through them, the easier the power flows through. Which, if you have too much voltage on it, will allow so much current to jam through there, it'll burn the semiconductor crystal up. So you have to protect it from itself.
So if I'm putting, say, the heat from my hand on my cell and actually increases the voltage, I guess the heat differential is actually assisting the ionic flow from anode to cathode.
That could be part of it, other than it converting the heat from your hand into electricity.
Right. It's actually absorbing it and actually making it into a heat power source.
Right.
That's interesting.
That's the test. You need to build one that can handle pumping out a ton of energy, like you can siphon that energy from it, and then test it to see if it gets colder from the more power you draw from it. If it starts getting colder, then that means you are converting thermal energy directly. You're reversing entropy to turn it into an ordered energy source from a disordered or chaotic energy source.
So would that be a violation of the second law of thermodynamics?
I'm trying to remember which one that is. That's not the one where basically you can't get more energy out of something than you put into it, right?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, no, that stops you from violating that, because it's turning the energy that you're putting into it that normally is not expected to be able to be turned into energy, electrical energy, but you found a way to turn that energy into a power source. That's the same thing with magnets. If you get a magnet cold enough, it'll eventually stop exhibiting a magnetic field because there's no electron flow. It's literally an electromagnet, but thermal energy is being turned into an electrical flow charge through the crystal that creates a magnetic field. So the magnetic field is not coming from nowhere.
Well, wait. That's basically saying that large bodies that are sub-zero have no magnetic field.
They're absolute zero, not a few degrees above or a fraction of a degree, but like actually absolute zero. That's the thing. If you drop to absolute zero, though, you're not going to be able to detect the thing anymore, because it won't interact with anything around it without the right amount and form of energy injected into it to re-energize it back from that dark matter state back into active matter state.
We don't have any instruments that actually could pick something like that up.
But yet the large body that is hypothetically at sub-zero or absolute, it does exist even though we can't detect it.
Right. That's why I've been saying, like the black hole thing. If you look at it, you got all this thermal energy coming off it.
So such a body can exist without heat?
Well, you're compressing everything to where it's excreting the heat from it before it gets dropped into that core. When it hits that core, it's now at absolute zero, so it can't interact with the gravitational field of the black hole, and it will just drift out without affecting anything around it. And we're not seeing any of this because we can't detect it. But
There's
when
no
it gets
magnetic field
re-energized,
because there's
those
no flow
particles
of electrons.
right, those particles will
So
eventually get, well, those particles are less than electrons. It'll recombine into the electrons and protons necessary to make hydrogen all over again.
Would something
here's
absolute zero actually suck in available energy? Because it's not moving, it would attract. It would.
No,
want
you're
to
you're looking at you're looking at something that won't interact with the things around it for the most part. So that's why I said I don't know what I don't know. Obviously, it can't be a 100%. There has to be something that can energize them, because we got matter that's popping up all the time, like in the Kashmir effect. So that material is probably dark matter that has gotten the right amount of the energy has been able to make contact with it. Maybe most of it just passes through because it's not moving, and something has to hit it directly to get absorbed so that it can then reactivate it with enough energy. But
Thomas, with my crystal battery cell, when I dead short it with an amp meter, the amps don't lose; they stay high. It's not losing the current; it stays up. It doesn't.
What about
move.
the voltage, though?
The voltage will go down a little bit, about half, but the current increases.
Okay. Yeah, so it's reacting like it's supposed to. Then it's following all those laws, but I still think probably the majority of your energy you're pulling from it, if it's lasting that long, is that thermal energy. It's not the material it's made out of breaking down. It's literally converting that thermal vibration energy into electrical current by swapping electrons around. It's probably because it's partially acting like a very, very sensitive diode. So
yeah, one way diode. Yeah, one direction diode. Yeah.
Have you looked into the laser ablating for making graphene foam out of things like paper and Captain Tape and whatnot?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that.
I was gonna say they if you look, you'll see there's some where they're saying like when they go back over with a lower power,
right,
it actually causes the material to start forming into these spikes, which they eventually stop forming because they run out of carbon to work with. But you could probably add more carbon to the atmosphere with like some well, I don't know if you'd want to use propane, but like maybe vaporized wax or something like that. Even carbon dioxide should still work though, because it'll deoxidize if you're using a UV laser instead of the blue laser they're using to deposit on that. So you could grow short nanotube structures off of your graphene foam, your carbon foam structure that you're wanting for one of those sides. That might increase your at least your amperage versus the amount of thickness of the material. Like increase the energy density is what I'm looking at.
Yeah, like the current is there. Like I'm getting well over 1 amp with each cell. So I got 4 cells. I got 4 amps. So say I put a light on it that requires 300 milliamps at 12 volts. It's running that light at 300 milliamps. It will only draw what it needs to run that light. Now, if I dead short it, the amps go through the roof.
Right.
So.
Yeah, the nanotube structure just basically is like taking the material that you're working with and crumpling it up so it'll act like a much bigger surface area cell. So
it seems like it's pumping. So when you draw current on it, it expands, right?
Right.
And when the expansion happens, that happens in the jelly substance in the cell, so that prevents it from fracturing. And then when the current is released off it, or the load, then it contracts back, re-gauges, and then it can do it again.
The dead short doesn't offer any resistance. That's why your amps go through the roof.
Yeah, it goes through the roof. Yeah, it just spikes like crazy.
Use a coil with some kind of impedance that would be different.
Well, the proper way that Michael Kant said you have to use the cell is it would be like in bursts and pulses. So it'd be 2 seconds on, 7 seconds off, 2 seconds on, 7 seconds off. So my ultimate goal is I want to make a 4 kilowatt generator system using these cells to regenerate my batteries. So I can have a 4 kilowatt system running all the time while the crystal power cells regenerate the batteries 24/7, 7 days a week. That's my goal.
Depending
So,
on how expensive they are, since a house doesn't move, you
well,
can literally line them up in your basement and start powering your house off of
yes.
them.
Yeah, pretty much.
And
Yes.
that's what I'm talking about.
So,
Now, why power your house? Why not power a shop where you got some sort of business that now you're not paying for your electricity, whereas
well,
Joe Blow down the street
think
doing
of
the
it.
same thing, he's still
Spin
paying
up
the
a
electric
flywheel
company,
with it.
and you
Okay.
can basically
No,
use that
no,
to pump back into your other projects.
no.
You know,
No, what you do is you hook it up to all your GPUs and start mining Bitcoin for free. How about that? How about that? There's an
even
idea.
better if it's actually turning that thermal energy into electricity. So that means it can siphon that heat out of that environment, even if you
Mhm.
got to throw it away
Yep,
on the roof running a fan or
you got
something. You
it.
know,
You
Spin up
got
a
it. I
flywheel.
put
so
no, you put the cells right beside the GPU. The GPU heats up my crystal cell and puts out more power. Thank you very
yep.
much.
Right.
Well, don't get
Yeah.
GPUs unless you're doing something that requires
Well,
GPUs. Get ASICs because they're way more efficient.
ASICs.
You'll generate money
Okay,
much faster.
with the A. Okay, the A6. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I was just kind of making a point. The energy
yeah.
and the heat created by those computer systems that could fuel my power cells and increase the
Sounds
potential of the cell.
sounds like
Yep.
these cells can also
So,
cool things
so you got to
down.
Well,
Yep.
I got to do some experiments with that. I got a thermal laser, so I can
Yeah. Let's find
do
out.
some experiments with that.
So
Curious.
I know the
So this
triboelectric
week,
system does that, but I don't know exactly how that's working. Like the triboelectric system requires a vacuum layer between the two with the
right,
gas particles moving back and
right.
forth, whereas a
I
chemical
have
system like that may
right.
just be
Well,
using that jelly like liquid to do its bouncing back and forth.
I'm using a solid state polyethylene glycol as my dielectric in the middle, and it works fantastic. It actually has electric properties to it, so
Hmm.
it's holding a charge.
Have you looked
So
at the
that's
oil that
part.
comes in the old
Isn't that like a
CRT video
splitter?
projectors? There's like an oil inside the right in front of the lens, in between the lens and the little screen because they're running so hot.
I'm using a sodium silicate, and that works really good. That's one compound, and the gel, the special electrolyte gel that I'm using. It's actually
I've got a
used
bunch
for
of it. I've been digging to see what people have done with it. So because I can't find any information on how the stuff's made. I just know that it doesn't change any of its properties, even from getting like up to 300 degrees. Whereas most oils
yeah.
start
It's
breaking down at that point.
probably
So
it'd probably be almost kind of like the coolant that you use in the car. Probably similar because it has a very very high boiling point, right? So it's probably an ethylene glycol type substance in it.
I don't know. I'll have to do some more digging.
Yeah, that's
I mean, it's not
the
easy to
first
come
I've ever
by.
heard of
So
that. Oh yeah,
they
because
those projectors
they
are
don't make
disappearing
those.
now. Yeah, they don't make them
That's right.
anymore. So everything's DLP. So that's part of
Yeah,
the replicator tech. I moved from the concept of using LCD arrays to shine the laser light through so that it can be turned into a pattern to using DLP tech. So that way you can literally
awesome.
control an entire path of area instead of it just being a dot. Like right now, 3D printers with the fused filament, just one dot, and that dot has to make its way to every single area that plastic's got to be. Same thing with the laser whenever you're doing laser sintering even. But with that system, you just shrink that down then after you run it through the DLP, and now you can actually
Right.
control a whole patterned array in one tiny little spot and hit the whole area at once. I've got a concept too for the filament where
Right
it
on.
uses like a slit, and instead of the whole slit being open for the plastic to flow through, you have square pins that drop down in there, and then you can
Right.
retract whichever pins you want to make the line any pattern you want while the head rotates around to basically if it's possible to get enough heat for that whole thing and whatnot for like 1,000 pin width array. We'll be looking
Right.
at being able to print something that takes 3 hours to print. It'll print in 30 minutes.
Wow.
I'm ready to go.
Anyways,
I mean, not 30 minutes. Sorry, 30 seconds. You know.
Yeah,
So
that's amazing. Thanks for coming on. We're gonna end the show. We've been on 2 hours and 35 minutes. I'm pretty tired. I've been up since early this morning. So Nathan, Ben, Mike,
send me
Lulu.
that guy's channel URL, the one that was on earlier.
Gerald's. Okay, hold on one sec. Just bear with me for a minute, and we'll call it a night. My internet's starting to crap out on me here.
You only got 38 comments on YouTube. Is that what that's saying up there in the corner?
Well, the live
I'm
chat.
gonna put mine in
live
chat as well.
See, I wonder how many people are being censored, so whatever they're typing isn't coming through either.
Yeah, my internet's been kind of funky tonight.
You know, I used
So
to
think
get
we
censored
touched
too.
on-
When you use words like, you know, SHIT and stuff like that, the algorithm starts watching you.
Yeah.
What you type.
Yeah.
There's a lot more that it seems to watch for too that seems way more innocuous. So I've been noticing that.
Hold on here. I'm having troubles with my.
I wonder how that's the Google breakup is going to affect all that, because they're getting ready to be monopoly busted. So
Yeah, the Google thing with the privacy. Okay. Trying to get Gerald's email.
I say
Yeah, I
that
have
that
it.
privacy thing probably isn't going to matter now. You saw that thing where over, what is it, like 2.4 billion people's social security numbers and whatnot had been leaked somehow.
Okay, in the private chat, I just posted Gerald's email, so you can get a hold of Gerald that way. It's in the private
good
chat.
deal.
You'll see the tab where it says private chat. All right, guys, thanks.
Got
This was a great show, awesome show. Please come on again. You're a wealth of knowledge. Yeah.
I'm going to be
amazing
doing
show.
some. I'll have to do them on Rumble, but I'm going to be doing some like presentation things as soon as I get everything sorted. Not only whiteboard everything so people can understand what I'm actually doing, but also the
Yeah.
physical
So
finish up and then
after
testing so they can see that it works. Because I'm really wanting
Yeah,
people to take
after-
advantage of like that thermal diode tech.
What's your Rumble account? Do you have a name on it?
Morph Trust, same as the one that I put in there. What is it? YouTube.com/ at Morph Trust. If you use that same name on Rumble, that's my primary channel, and everything else is umbrellaed underneath
Yeah.
that.
You can also put it in the comments after the show, and then people can
Yeah.
go back to the comments
That
and see
maybe that won't
there.
get censored. Yeah. Only way to find out is to refresh the page and look and see if it's there. I got to where I started opening. Anytime I was watching a live chat, a live stream on YouTube, I'd open 2 instances and put one on each of my screens on my computer, so I'd know if something's getting through. Because if it's not getting through, you know, what's the point in trying to communicate with somebody whenever they've been deafened by someone in between?
Yeah,
you
know?
So-
It's good
Yeah,
to
that's
go
a
on
pretty
multiple
common exploit.
platforms.
You can actually do that to increase your views a little bit. Put a view on each window. Tell your viewers to do the same, and then just increase it.
I was
All
doing
right, guys,
something kind
thanks
of
a
like
lot
that
for-
on Twitch, but not intentionally. So,
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Later, guys.
Thanks,
Okay,
everybody.
thanks a lot,
for having
guys.
us.
on.
Thanks,
So-
Nathan, Mike.
Yeah.
Mike.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care.
Nice meeting you, Thomas.
Night.
Take care. Bye. Bye.